The door clicked open. Ethan Mercer froze, his breath catching in his throat as his eyes met the startled gaze of Vanessa Hart, the billionaire CEO of Nexus Corporation, standing in her office in the middle of changing her blazer. For 3 agonizing seconds, neither moved. His mind screamed at him to run, to apologize, to disappear before security arrived and destroyed everything he'd fought so hard to protect. One mistake. That's all it would take to lose the 3 jobs keeping his daughter alive. But then she spoke, her voice cutting through his panic like a blade. Wait. His world stopped spinning. This was it, the moment that would either destroy him or change everything. Before we dive into this story, I invite you to stay until the very end to see how one accidental moment transformed 2 lives forever. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Ethan Mercer pushed his cleaning cart down the empty hallway of the executive floor, each wheel squeaking in rhythmic protest against the polished marble. It was 10:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, a time he was never supposed to be here. The executive suites belonged to a different world, one populated by people in tailored suits and confident strides, people who made decisions that affected thousands of lives with the stroke of a pen. Ethan didn't belong here. He knew it. Everyone knew it. But Carlos had called in sick that morning, and the facilities manager had been desperate enough to offer Ethan an extra shift at time-and-a-half pay. When you were a 33-year-old single father working 3 jobs to keep your daughter's medication cabinet stocked, you didn't say no to time and a half. You didn't say no to anything that kept the lights on and the inhalers filled. So here he was, exhausted down to his bones, pushing a cart that held industrial-strength cleaner, microfiber cloths, and the weight of responsibilities that would crush most men his age. The executive floor was eerily quiet during business hours. Most of the corner offices were occupied by executives in meetings or hunched over laptops, too absorbed in million-dollar decisions to notice the invisible man emptying their trash cans. Ethan preferred it that way. Invisibility was safety. Invisibility was survival. He approached office 4701, checking his clipboard. The nameplate on the door read simply, V. Hart, Chief Executive Officer. Ethan had cleaned this office exactly 3 times before, always during the night shift when the entire floor was deserted. He knew the routine: quick vacuum, dust the shelves, empty the small waste bin, wipe down the glass desk. 10 minutes maximum. Ms. Hart was known for keeping an immaculate workspace. There was rarely much to clean. He knocked twice, a habit ingrained from years of janitorial work. No response. The room beyond the frosted glass door appeared dark. Standard procedure. He pulled out his master key card. What Ethan didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Vanessa Hart had returned early from a board meeting that had gone catastrophically wrong. She'd walked into her office 15 minutes earlier, her mind churning with damage control strategies, and immediately shrugged off her blazer, which had become suffocating during the 3-hour verbal battle over quarterly projections. She was standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, adjusting a fresh blazer she'd pulled from the small closet she kept for exactly these situations, when she heard the distinctive beep of a keycard accessing her door. Ethan pushed the door open, his eyes on the clipboard, already mentally calculating how much time he had before his daughter's school pickup. Then he looked up, time fractured into 1,000 crystalline pieces. Vanessa Hart stood 15 feet away, her blazer half on, her expression shifting from neutral concentration to startled surprise in the span of a heartbeat. She wasn't indecent, she wore a professional blouse and skirt, but the moment was intimate in a way that made Ethan's stomach drop through the floor. Their eyes met. For 3 eternal seconds, the universe held its breath. Ethan's mind exploded into panic. Every worst-case scenario flooded through him simultaneously. Security, termination, a lawsuit he couldn't afford, his daughter's terrified face when he told her they'd lost everything, the homeless shelter they'd narrowly avoided 3 years ago rushing back toward them like a freight train. "I'm sorry, I thought..." The words tumbled out in a desperate rush as he immediately stepped backward, his cleaning cart bumping against the doorframe with a loud clatter. He averted his eyes, staring hard at the carpet, his face burning with humiliation. "I knocked. I didn't hear anyone. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Hart. He was already turning, already preparing to grab his cart and disappear, already wondering if he should head straight to HR to get ahead of the inevitable termination notice. Wait! The single word cut through his spiral like a knife. Ethan froze, his hand still on the cart handle, his heart hammering so hard he was certain she could hear it from across the room. Slowly, so slowly it felt like moving through concrete, he turned back toward her. Vanessa had finished putting on her blazer. She stood with her arms crossed, not in anger, but in what appeared to be curiosity. Her expression was unreadable, those sharp green eyes studying him with an intensity that made him want to dissolve into the marble floor. "Close the door," she said quietly. Every instinct screamed at him to run. Closed doors meant serious conversations. Closed doors meant consequences. But you didn't disobey a direct order from the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, not when you were a janitor who'd just committed what could easily be construed as a violation of privacy. Ethan pushed the cart inside and closed the door with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. The office was enormous, at least 3 times the size of the apartment he shared with Lily. One wall was entirely glass, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. The furniture was minimalist but clearly expensive. A glass desk that looked like it was carved from a single sheet of ice, sleek leather chairs, abstract art that probably cost more than his annual salary. He stood there, hands clasped in front of him, eyes focused on a point somewhere around her shoulders, because looking directly at her felt like staring into the sun. "What's your name?" Vanessa asked. The question surprised him. "Ethan, ma'am. Ethan Mercer." "How long have you worked here, Ethan?" 4 years, ma'am. Night shift mostly. Facilities maintenance. But you're here during the day." It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "Yes, ma'am. Carlos Rodriguez called in sick and they needed someone to cover the executive floor. I took the shift." Vanessa walked toward her desk, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She didn't sit. Instead, she leaned against the edge of the desk, her posture relaxed, but her gaze still locked on him with that same unsettling intensity. "The executive floor," she repeated slowly. "That's unusual for night staff, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am." Ethan felt sweat beginning to bead on his forehead, despite the perfectly climate-controlled office. "I usually work the lower floors, 3rd through 8th, sometimes the cafeteria level if they need extra help." "But you took this shift anyway." "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" The question hung in the air between them like a trap. Ethan's mind raced. What did she want to hear? What was the right answer that wouldn't make things worse? But as he stood there, drowning in anxiety, something shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the surreal nature of the entire situation. Maybe it was the crushing weight of carrying too many secrets for too many years. The truth slipped out before he could stop it. "I needed the money, ma'am." Vanessa's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Night shift doesn't pay enough?" "It pays fine for the hours I get." Ethan hesitated, then added quietly, "They cut hours across the board last month. Budget adjustments." "So you're working additional shifts to compensate?" "Yes, ma'am." There was a long pause. Ethan could hear his own breathing, could feel his pulse throbbing in his temples. He waited for the axe to fall, for her to call security, for his world to collapse. Instead, Vanessa asked another question, one that felt like it came from a completely different conversation. "Do you have children, Ethan?" The unexpected shift nearly gave him whiplash. Yes, ma'am. A daughter, Lily. She's 8. And her mother?" The old wound throbbed. "She passed away 3 years ago. Car accident." Something shifted in Vanessa's expression, a softening so subtle he almost missed it. "I'm sorry," she said, and it sounded genuine, not like the hollow condolences he'd heard 1,000 times before. "Thank you, ma'am." Another pause. Vanessa moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. "You're working multiple jobs to support your daughter." It wasn't a question, but Ethan answered anyway. 3, ma'am. Night janitor here, weekend delivery driver for Metro Express, and I pick up day shifts whenever facilities need someone." 3 jobs. She turned back to face him. "When do you sleep?" The laugh that escaped him was bitter and exhausted. "When I can, ma'am." "And your daughter? Who takes care of her while you're working?" "Mrs. Chen next door watches her most nights. Lily's in school during the day. I pick her up at 3:30 when I can, or Mrs. Chen does it if I'm on a delivery run. Vanessa nodded slowly, as if confirming something she already suspected. Then she asked the question that would crack open everything Ethan had been holding inside. Why 3 jobs, Ethan? What are you paying for? He could have deflected, should have deflected. A generic answer about bills and rent would have been safe, appropriate, the kind of response that kept his private struggles private. But there was something in the way she asked, not with pity, but with genuine interest, that dismantled his defenses. Medical expenses, he heard himself say. Lily has severe asthma. The medications, the inhalers, the emergency room visits when she has an attack. Insurance covers some of it, but not enough. Not nearly enough. The words, once started, wouldn't stop. Her specialist is out of network because he's the only one in the city who understands her specific condition. The inhalers cost $200 each, and she needs a new one every 6 weeks. The preventative medications are another $350 a month. Last winter she had pneumonia and spent 4 days in the hospital. That bill alone was $12,000 even after insurance. Ethan's voice cracked slightly, but he pushed forward, unable to stop the flood. I had savings when Sarah died. Not much, but enough for a few months. It's all gone now, every penny. I'm paying off the hospital in installments, working the extra jobs to keep current on the medications because if I fall behind, if I can't afford her prescriptions, he swallowed hard. She can't breathe without them. Literally can't breathe. The office fell silent except for the faint hum of the ventilation system. Ethan stood there, exposed and vulnerable, wondering what had possessed him to dump his entire life story on the most powerful person in the building. She hadn't asked for his sob story. She'd asked a simple question, and he'd unraveled like a cheap sweater. I'm sorry, he said quickly. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. Vanessa's voice was firm, but not unkind. I asked. You answered honestly. She walked back to her desk and sat down, gesturing to one of the chairs across from her. Sit. Ethan hesitated. Janitors didn't sit in the CEO's office. Janitors didn't have conversations with the CEO at all. Sit, Ethan. He sat. The chair was absurdly comfortable, the kind of ergonomic design that probably cost more than his monthly rent. He perched on the edge, his posture rigid, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Vanessa studied him for a long moment, her fingers steepled in front of her. When she finally spoke, her words were the last thing he expected. I want to tell you a story, she said, about a 23-year-old woman who lived in her car for 6 months because she couldn't afford rent and entry-level positions in her field. Ethan blinked, confused by the sudden shift. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, her gaze distant, as if looking at something far beyond the office walls. She had a business degree from a state school, nothing prestigious but legitimate. She'd graduated with honors, top of her class, convinced that hard work and intelligence would be enough. But the job market had other ideas. The CEO's voice was matter-of-fact, almost detached, but Ethan heard the undercurrent of old pain beneath the words. She sent out 217 applications. She got 12 interviews, 0 offers. Apparently, no relevant experience was code for, we don't believe you belong here. So she lived in a 1998 Honda Civic, showering at the gym, rotating between 3 thrift store outfits for interviews, and learning to survive on protein bars and gas station coffee. Ethan sat frozen, unable to process what he was hearing. One morning, Vanessa continued, she was sitting in a coffee shop, one of those places where if you buy a single cup, you can sit for hours using the Wi-Fi, preparing for yet another interview. She was exhausted, defeated. She'd been sleeping in her car for 4 months, and winter was coming. She was seriously considering giving up, going back to her hometown, admitting failure. Vanessa's eyes refocused, meeting Ethan's directly. A man sat down across from her. He was older, maybe 60, wearing an expensive suit. He asked what she was working on. She almost told him to leave her alone. She was too tired for small talk, but something made her answer honestly. The CEO paused, a faint smile touching her lips. That man was Richard Sutton, the founder of Nexus Corporation, and that conversation led to an entry-level position in business development. Not charity, he made that very clear. He said he saw something in me, a hunger and determination that couldn't be taught. He gave me a chance. One chance. And I built everything from there. Ethan's mind reeled. The woman sitting across from him, worth billions, had lived in her car? Why are you telling me this? He asked quietly. Vanessa stood and walked back to the window. Because for the past 6 weeks, I've been watching you, Ethan. His blood ran cold. Ma'am? I come in early sometimes, she said, still looking out at the city, before sunrise. I like the quiet, and several times I've seen you working on the lower floors when I pass through. I've watched you stay late after your shift ends to help other staff finish their routes. I've seen you reorganize supply closets that weren't your responsibility, fix broken equipment that facilities hadn't gotten around to repairing, clean up spills in the lobby that you could have easily walked past. She turned to face him. I've watched you work with a level of care and dedication that most of my executive team doesn't demonstrate. And I started wondering about you. Who is this man who treats a night janitor position like it's the most important job in the building? Ethan had no idea what to say. So I looked into your file, Vanessa continued. Perfect attendance for 4 years, 0 complaints, multiple commendations from other staff, and then I saw the notes about the hour reductions and the request for additional shifts. She crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. I didn't know about your daughter. I didn't know about the medical expenses. But I knew there was something driving you, something that made you different from the dozens of other maintenance staff who do their jobs adequately and go home. Ethan's throat felt tight. I do what needs to be done. Exactly, Vanessa nodded. Character Ethan reveals itself in how people behave when no one important is watching, and you've been demonstrating extraordinary character in moments you thought were completely invisible. The weight of her words settled over him like a blanket. What happened this morning, Vanessa said slowly, was an accident. A simple mistake caused by scheduling overlap and bad timing. You knocked. I didn't hear you. You entered, doing exactly what your job requires, and the moment you realized the situation, you immediately tried to leave and apologize. She moved back to her desk, leaning against it. Some people in your position might have tried to exploit that moment, might have made demands or threats. But you were terrified you'd lose your job, terrified of what it would mean for your daughter. Ethan nodded mutely. So let me be absolutely clear, Vanessa said, her voice firm. You are not fired. You are not being reprimanded. There will be no note in your file, no conversation with HR, no consequences whatsoever. Understood? Relief crashed through him so intensely he felt lightheaded. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. But, Vanessa held up a hand, I do want to discuss something else with you. The relief evaporated, replaced by fresh anxiety. I've been restructuring our facilities management department, she said. We're creating a new position, facilities operations coordinator. It's a management track role overseeing maintenance operations, coordinating with vendors, managing scheduling, ensuring quality control across all our properties. Ethan had no idea where this was going. The position comes with a significant salary increase, roughly double what you're making now in your current role, even with the overtime. Full benefits, including comprehensive health insurance with a low deductible and a wide network that would almost certainly include your daughter's specialist. Dental, vision, 401k matching, the works. Standard business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. His heart began to pound for an entirely different reason. But, Vanessa continued, it also requires skills you don't currently have: project management, vendor negotiation, budget oversight, staff coordination. You'd need to learn. It would be hard work. She looked at him directly. I'm offering you the position, Ethan, with a 6-month probationary training period where you'd work under our current facilities director, learning the ropes. If you succeed, the job is yours permanently. If you struggle, we'll help you find another path within the company. Ethan's mind went blank. He couldn't process what he was hearing. It was too big, too impossible. I don't understand, he stammered. Why me? Because Richard Sutton once took a chance on a 23-year-old woman living in her car, and she turned that chance into everything you see around you. Vanessa gestured at the office, the building, the city beyond. Because I believe in paying that forward, and because I've watched you demonstrate the exact qualities this position requires: reliability, dedication, attention to detail, and the ability to care about things that other people overlook. She stood and extended her hand across the desk. This isn't charity, Ethan. This is opportunity. I'm offering it because I believe you can succeed, but you have to want it. You have to be willing to work harder than you've ever worked, to learn things that will be difficult, to step into a role that will challenge you every single day. Ethan stared at her outstretched hand. His entire life, he'd been invisible. The guy who emptied trash cans and mopped floors. The struggling single dad barely keeping his head above water. The man who existed in the shadows of other people's success. And now the most powerful person in the building was offering him a ladder out of that darkness. Tears burned behind his eyes, but he fought them back. His hand shook slightly as he reached across the desk and grasped hers. Yes, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Yes, ma'am. I want it. Vanessa's smile was genuine and warm. Good. You start Monday. HR will process all the paperwork this afternoon. Take the rest of today off, paid, and spend it with your daughter. She released his hand and pulled a business card from her desk drawer, writing something on the back before handing it to him. That's my direct number, she said. Not my assistant's line, mine. If you ever need anything, advice, resources, just someone to talk to, you call that number. Understood? Ethan looked down at the card, his vision blurring slightly. I don't know what to say. Say you'll succeed, Vanessa replied simply. Say you'll prove that I made the right choice. I will, Ethan promised, his voice fierce with determination. I swear to you, I will. Vanessa nodded, satisfied. I know you will. Now go home to your daughter. Ethan stood on shaky legs, still clutching the business card like it was made of gold. He made it to the door before he turned back. Ms. Hart? Yes? Thank you. The words were completely inadequate for what he felt, but they were all he had. Thank you for seeing me. Vanessa's expression softened. Sometimes the best people are the ones everyone else looks past, Ethan. I learned that a long time ago. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak further, and walked out of the office in a daze. The cleaning cart sat abandoned in the hallway where he'd left it, a relic of a life that had just fundamentally shifted beneath his feet. Tuck. Ethan didn't remember the drive home. One moment he was standing in the executive floor elevator, still trembling with disbelief, and the next he was pulling into the parking lot of his apartment complex, a modest building in a neighborhood that was one step above rough. He sat in his car for 10 minutes, staring at nothing, trying to convince himself that what had just happened was real. The business card was still in his hand, the embossed logo of Nexus Corporation catching the afternoon sunlight. He flipped it over, reading the handwritten number on the back. Vanessa Hart's personal line. A CEO's personal number, in his hand. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in his chest, part joy, part disbelief, part exhausted relief. He pulled out his phone and stared at it for a long moment before making the call. Hello? Mrs. Chen's accented voice came through the speaker. Hi, Mrs. Chen, it's Ethan. Is Lily there? Oh, yes, she just got home from school. You want to talk? Actually, I'm downstairs. Can you send her down? I'm taking her out for the afternoon. There was a pause. Mrs. Chen knew his schedule as well as he did. He was never home at 2 in the afternoon on a weekday. Everything okay? She asked carefully. Everything's perfect, Ethan said, and meant it. Everything just... Something good happened, Mrs. Chen. Something really good. Oh. He could hear the smile in her voice. Okay. I send her down now. 3 minutes later, Lily came bounding out of the building's entrance, her backpack bouncing against her small frame. She was tiny for 8, a side effect of the chronic illness that had plagued her since infancy, but her smile could light up entire city blocks. She spotted the car and ran over, yanking open the door with the kind of energy only children possessed. Dad, what are you doing here? Did you get off work early? She climbed into the back seat, buckling herself in with practiced efficiency. Ethan turned in his seat to look at his daughter, this beautiful, fierce little girl who'd survived more in 8 years than most people faced in a lifetime. I did, sweetheart, and I thought we could do something special this afternoon. Lily's eyes widened. Like what? Whatever you want. Ice cream? The park? That bookstore you love? All of them? Lily asked hopefully. Ethan laughed, the sound coming easier than it had in months. Yeah, baby, all of them. As he pulled out of the parking lot, Lily chattered excitedly about her day at school, about a science project on butterflies, about how her friend Emma had shared her lunch when Lily forgot hers. Ethan listened, really listened, without the usual background noise of anxiety about money and schedules and which bill to pay first. For the first time in 3 years, the future looked like something other than an endless grind of survival. It looked like possibility. They started at the ice cream shop, where Lily deliberated for 15 minutes between chocolate chip cookie dough and birthday cake flavor before choosing both in a double scoop. Ethan ordered butter pecan, and they sat at a small table outside, watching people pass by on the busy street. "Dad?" Lily said, around a mouthful of ice cream. "Hmm? You seem happy today, like really happy." "Smart kid. Too smart sometimes." "I am happy, Lil. Something good happened at work." "Did you get a raise?" She asked it with the kind of casual awareness that broke his heart. 8 years old, and she already understood that money dictated their lives. "Sort of," Ethan said carefully. "I got offered a new job. A better one. It means I won't have to work at night anymore. I'll be home with you more." Lily's spoon stopped halfway to her mouth. "Really? Really?" She set down her ice cream and launched herself at him, wrapping her thin arms around his neck in a fierce hug. "That's the best thing ever!" Ethan held her tight, feeling the tears he'd been fighting all day finally escape down his cheeks. He didn't care who saw. After ice cream came the bookstore, where Lily spent 45 minutes browsing the children's section while Ethan picked up 2 books about project management and one about facilities operations. If he was going to do this, he was going to do it right. At the checkout, Lily placed 3 books on the counter, one about a girl who wanted to be an astronaut, one about the human body, and one called When I Grow Up, Careers in Medicine. The last one made Ethan pause. "Medicine, huh?" Lily nodded seriously. "I was thinking about it today. Dr. Morrison helps me breathe better when I have attacks. That seems like a really important job." Ethan's chest tightened. "It is, baby. It's one of the most important jobs there is. So maybe I could do that. Help other kids like me." He knelt down to her level, looking into her bright, determined eyes. "You can be anything you want to be, Lily. Anything at all. And I'm going to make sure you have every chance to do it." She smiled and threw her arms around him again. "I know, Dad. You always do." If she only knew how close they'd come to losing everything, how many times he'd stared at bills he couldn't pay, at a bank account with double digits, at the growing balance on medical debt that felt like an anchor dragging them under. But she didn't need to know that. Not anymore. They ended the afternoon at the park, where Lily played on the swings while Ethan sat on a bench, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "HR has processed your paperwork. You're in the system. Welcome to the team. VH." Ethan stared at the message, then looked up at his daughter, laughing as she tried to swing high enough to touch the sky with her feet. The moment in Vanessa's office that morning had felt like the end of the world. Instead, it had been the beginning of something he'd stopped believing was possible. Hope. "Higher, Dad! Watch how high I can go!" Lily called out, her voice full of pure joy. "I'm watching, baby," Ethan called back, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm watching." And as the sun set over the city, turning everything golden, Ethan Mercer allowed himself to believe, truly believe, that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. Better than okay. They were going to thrive. Monday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy that made Ethan's hand shake as he knotted his tie for the 3rd time. He'd bought it Saturday afternoon at a discount store along with 2 button-down shirts and a pair of dress pants that actually fit. The total had made him wince, but Mrs. Chen had insisted, practically pushing him out the door with Lily. "You need to look the part," she'd said firmly. "New job, new clothes. This is investment." Now, standing in front of the bathroom mirror at 6 in the morning, Ethan barely recognized himself. The man staring back looked professional, put together, like someone who belonged in an office instead of pushing a cleaning cart. "Dad, you look fancy." Lily appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school in jeans and her favorite purple sweater. "You think so?" Ethan tugged at the collar, which felt too tight despite being the right size. "Like a businessman on TV." She grinned. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," he admitted. Lily walked over and straightened his tie with surprising expertise. You're going to be great. You're the hardest worker I know. When did you get so wise? Ethan asked, ruffling her hair. I learned from the best. She hugged him quickly. Now come on, Mrs. Chen made us breakfast. The smell of eggs and toast greeted them as they entered Mrs. Chen's apartment next door. The elderly woman had been their lifeline for 3 years, watching Lily for rates so low they were practically charity, though she'd never admit it. Big day, Mrs. Chen announced, setting plates on her small kitchen table. Eat, eat! You need energy! Ethan sat, his stomach too knotted with anxiety to feel hungry, but he forced himself to eat. Lily chattered between bites about her science project, apparently unconcerned that her father's entire life was about to change. At 7:30, Ethan kissed Lily goodbye and headed for his car, the same beat-up sedan that had carried him through 4 years of night shifts. The morning commute felt strange, wrong somehow. He was used to driving these streets in darkness, the city asleep around him. Now everything was alive with rush-hour traffic, people in suits clutching coffee cups, the world awake and moving. He parked in the employee garage, but instead of heading to the service entrance like muscle memory demanded, he walked through the main lobby. The security guard, Marcus, did a double-take. Ethan? That you, man? Yeah, it's me. What's with the suit? You get promoted or something? The question made it real in a way nothing else had. Yeah, actually, facilities operations coordinator. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. No kidding. That's fantastic, man. Congrats. Thanks. Ethan managed a smile despite his churning stomach. The elevator ride to the 8th floor felt impossibly long. HR had sent him detailed instructions Friday afternoon. Report to Director of Facilities Thomas Crawford's office at 8 a.m. sharp. He'd Googled Crawford over the weekend, finding a middle-aged man with a stern expression in the company directory photo. The facilities department occupied a corner of the 8th floor, a cluster of offices and cubicles that managed everything from building maintenance to vendor contracts. Ethan had never been up here during business hours, had never seen it populated with actual people working at desks. He found Crawford's office easily, the door open, revealing a compact space dominated by filing cabinets and blueprints. The man himself sat behind a desk covered in purchase orders and facility reports, his gray hair cut military short, his polo shirt embroidered with the Nexus logo. Ethan knocked on the doorframe. Mr. Crawford, I'm Ethan Mercer. Crawford looked up, his expression unreadable. Right, the special project. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Special project. The words carried an edge that made Ethan's anxiety spike. He sat, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Crawford leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan with the kind of assessment that felt uncomfortably thorough. I'm going to be straight with you, Mercer. This wasn't my idea. The blunt statement hit like a punch. The CEO called me personally Friday afternoon, Crawford continued, his tone matter-of-fact. Told me I was getting a new coordinator, effective immediately. Told me he was coming from night janitorial with no management experience. Told me I had 6 months to train him up or explain why it didn't work. Ethan's mouth went dry. Now, I've been running facilities for this company for 15 years. I know my job, and I know my team. And I don't appreciate having decisions made over my head, even if they're coming from the top floor. Crawford's eyes narrowed. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, sir. Good. Crawford pulled out a thick binder and dropped it on the desk with a thud. That being said, I follow orders, and my orders are to train you. So that's what I'm going to do. But let me make something clear right now. I don't do charity. You want this job, you earn it. No shortcuts, no special treatment because the CEO took a shine to you. You work harder than everyone else, you learn faster than anyone has a right to expect, and you prove that you belong here. Clear? Crystal clear, sir. Don't call me sir, I work for a living. A ghost of a smile touched Crawford's weathered face. It's Tom. And if we're doing this, we're doing it right. He pushed the binder across the desk. That's the facilities operations manual, building codes, safety protocols, vendor contracts, maintenance schedules, emergency procedures. You've got 1 week to memorize it. Ethan opened the binder. It was easily 300 pages of dense technical information. 1 week? He said faintly. You got a problem with that? No. Tom, 1 week. Good. Because week 2, you're shadowing every department head, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, janitorial, grounds, security systems. You're going to learn what every single person in this building does and why it matters. Crawford stood, grabbing a radio from his desk. But before any of that, you're going to spend today understanding what you're actually managing. He tossed Ethan the radio. Come on. They spent the next 8 hours walking every floor of the building. Crawford moved with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, pointing out systems and potential problems with the kind of detailed knowledge that only came from decades of experience. See that stain on the ceiling tile? Crawford pointed up in a third-floor hallway. That's a slow leak from the bathroom above. Happened 3 weeks ago. Got fixed by a contractor who didn't know his ass from his elbow. It's going to fail again within a month, which is why you always verify repairs yourself. He led Ethan into a mechanical room where massive HVAC units hummed with industrial purpose. This system serves floors 3 through 6. It's 20 years old, past manufacturer's recommended replacement date, but still running strong because we maintain it properly. You know what proper maintenance costs annually? No, sir, Tom. $50,000. You know what replacing it would cost? More? Try $3 million. Your job is to know these numbers because when you're sitting in budget meetings, you need to justify every dollar you're requesting. The executives don't care about keeping buildings comfortable. They care about ROI and cost efficiency. Crawford's radio crackled. Tom, we've got a situation in the executive kitchen. Dishwasher's flooding. Copy that. On our way. Crawford was already moving, his stride purposeful. Ethan hurried to keep up. They arrived at the executive floor kitchen to find water pooling across the tile floor. A young maintenance worker frantically trying to shut off the water supply while an annoyed-looking assistant stood in the doorway, arms crossed. About time, the assistant snapped. I called this in 10 minutes ago. Crawford ignored her, dropping to one knee to assess the situation. Marcus, did you check the inlet valve? Yes, sir. It's seized. Won't turn. Then you shut off the main water supply to this section, not stand here watching it flood. Crawford's voice was sharp, but not cruel. Basic protocol, son. What's rule number 1? Stop the damage first, diagnose second, Marcus recited, looking miserable. Exactly. Now go shut it down. Utility closet, end of the hall. As Marcus ran off, Crawford turned to Ethan. You're up. There's a wet vac in the janitorial closet, room 4120. Go get it and start cleaning this up while I handle the valve. Ethan moved without thinking, muscle memory from 4 years of night shifts guiding him to the supply closet. He returned with the wet vac and began sucking up water while Crawford worked on the dishwasher. The assistant watched with obvious irritation. How long is this going to take? The executive team has a lunch meeting in 2 hours. As long as it takes to do it right, Crawford said flatly, not looking up from his work. 15 minutes later, the water was cleaned up, the dishwasher repaired with a replacement valve Crawford had retrieved from inventory, and the kitchen was functional again. As they walked away, Crawford said, You saw what happened there? Marcus panicked? Marcus hasn't been properly trained on emergency protocols. That's a management failure, which means it's on me. Crawford's jaw tightened. And you saw how the assistant treated us? Like we were an inconvenience. Exactly. Get used to it. Facilities is invisible until something breaks, and then we're either miracle workers or incompetent, depending on how fast we fix it. There's no middle ground. They continued the tour through the afternoon, Crawford pointing out potential problems, explaining complex systems, drilling Ethan on terminology and procedures. By 4 o'clock, Ethan's head was spinning with information about air handlers, electrical panels, water pressure systems, and fire suppression protocols. That's enough for today, Crawford said finally. Go home, study that manual. Tomorrow we start on vendor management. Ethan made it back to his new desk, a small cubicle near Crawford's office, and collapsed into the chair. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Mrs. Chen and a text. Lily has small cough. Gave her inhaler. She is fine but wanted you to know. His heart lurched. Small cough could become big problem very quickly with Lily's condition. He was dialing Mrs. and Chen when Crawford appeared at his cubicle entrance. Problem? My daughter. She has asthma. And go! Crawford cut him off. It's past 4 anyway. Family first. Mercer. Always. Ethan grabbed his jacket, surprised by the understanding in Crawford's tone. "Thank you. Just be here at 7 tomorrow, ready to work." The drive home felt longer than usual, traffic crawling, his mind catastrophizing about Lily's cough despite Mrs. Chen's reassurance. He burst into the apartment to find his daughter curled up on the couch watching cartoons, looking perfectly fine. "Dad, you're home early." She sat up, smiling. The relief nearly buckled his knees. "Mrs. Chen said you were coughing." "Just a little. I use my inhaler like I'm supposed to." She patted the couch next to her. "Come watch with me. You look tired." Ethan sat, and Lily immediately snuggled against his side. He wrapped his arm around her, feeling the steady rise and fall of her breathing, reassuring himself that she was okay. "How was your first day?" she asked. "Overwhelming," he admitted. "I have so much to learn." "You'll learn it. You always figure things out." Her confidence in him was absolute, unshakable. If only he felt half as certain. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat at their small kitchen table with the facilities manual open in front of him. The technical language was dense, the information seemingly endless. He took notes, made flashcards, tried to organize the information into categories that made sense. At midnight, he was still studying when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that turned out to be Crawford. "Get some sleep. Marathon, not a sprint." Ethan stared at the message, surprised. Maybe the gruff facilities director wasn't quite as opposed to this arrangement as he'd seemed. He texted back, "Yes, sir. Thanks." The response came immediately. "Told you not to call me sir." Despite his exhaustion, Ethan smiled. The next morning started at 6 a.m. with another round of studying before getting Lily ready for school. The routine was different now. Breakfast at home instead of Mrs. Chen's, Ethan in a dress shirt instead of his janitorial uniform, the morning feeling somehow more hopeful despite his anxiety. At work, Crawford was waiting with a stack of vendor contracts and a grim expression. "Pop quiz," he said without preamble. "What's the minimum required air changes per hour for the executive conference room?" Ethan's mind raced through last night's reading. 6 ACH for standard occupancy, 8 for high-density meetings. Water pressure requirements for fire suppression systems? Minimum 50 pounds per square inch at the highest sprinkler head. Emergency generator fuel capacity? Enough for 72 hours of operation at full building load. Crawford's expression shifted slightly, something that might have been approval. "You actually studied. You said 1 week to memorize the manual. Most people ignore that. Think they can wing it." Crawford dropped the contracts on Ethan's desk. "These are our current vendor agreements. HVAC maintenance, electrical, plumbing, janitorial supplies, landscaping, security systems. You're going to review every single one and tell me which ones are overpriced and which ones are actually worth what we're paying." "How am I supposed to know that?" "Research, market rates, competitor pricing, service quality reports. You've got internet access and a phone. Use them." Crawford turned to leave, then paused. "And Mercer?" "The HVAC contract is definitely overpriced. That's your gimme. The others, you figure out yourself." The next 3 weeks blurred together in a haze of information overload. Ethan shadowed the electrical supervisor and learned about circuit loads and backup power systems. He spent 2 days with the HVAC team, crawling through ductwork and learning the difference between supply and return air systems. He worked alongside the janitorial staff, his former colleagues who treated him with a mixture of congratulations and wariness, and saw the job from a management perspective for the first time. In the evenings, he studied. The facilities manual became his Bible, supplemented by industry journals, YouTube videos on building systems, and online courses in project management. He barely saw Lily awake during the week, arriving home after her bedtime most nights, leaving before she woke most mornings. It was Mrs. Chen who finally cornered him one evening when he got home at 9 p.m. "This is too much," she said firmly, blocking his path to his apartment. "You're going to make yourself sick." "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen." "You're not fine. You look like Ghost. When did you last eat real meal?" Ethan tried to remember and couldn't. "Exactly." She grabbed his arm with surprising strength and pulled him into her apartment, where Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table. "Dad!" Lily looked up, her face lighting up before falling slightly. You missed dinner again. The guilt hit like a physical blow. I'm sorry, baby. Work is just crazy, I know. Lily's voice was understanding, but sad. You say that every night. Mrs. Chen pushed him into a chair and set a plate of reheated stir-fry in front of him. You eat. You spend time with daughter. Work will be there tomorrow. She was right, Ethan knew. But the weight of proving himself, of justifying Vanessa's faith in him, of not failing at this opportunity, pressed down on him constantly. Tell me about school, he said to Lily, forcing himself to focus on her instead of the chapters he still needed to review tonight. Lily's face brightened. We started learning about the respiratory system in science. Mrs. Palmer let me explain to the class about asthma since I know so much about it. Yeah? What did you tell them? About how the airways get narrow and inflamed and how that makes it hard to breathe, and about rescue inhalers versus preventative medication. She spoke with the confidence of someone who'd lived with the condition her entire life. Some kids didn't know asthma could be serious. They thought it was just like getting out of breath. You educated them. That's important. Mrs. Palmer said I should think about being a doctor when I grow up. She said I already understand more about medicine than most adults. Ethan felt his chest tighten with a different kind of emotion. You'd make an amazing doctor, Lil. I think so too, when she grinned. But it takes a lot of school, right? Like years and years? College, then medical school, then residency. At least 12 years after high school. That's okay, I'm good at school. She paused, then added more quietly, and now we have better insurance so I can go to college, right? That's what you said? He told her that a week ago, trying to explain why he was working so hard. The new position came with education benefits that included dependent scholarships. That's right, baby. You can go anywhere you want. Lily smiled, satisfied, and returned to her homework. Mrs. Chen caught Ethan's eye and nodded approvingly, as if to say, This is what matters. He stayed another hour helping Lily with her math homework, listening to her read from her current favorite book, just being present in a way he hadn't managed since starting the new position. When he finally left, the stack of reading waiting in his apartment felt less urgent. Crawford might have said it was a marathon, not a sprint. Maybe it was time to start pacing himself. The fourth week brought a new challenge, Ethan's first solo project. Crawford dropped a file on his desk Tuesday morning with his usual directness. Building C needs a new water heater. Current one's failing. We've got maybe 2 weeks before it dies completely. You're going to manage the replacement. Ethan opened the file, seeing vendor quotes, installation schedules, and budget projections. By myself? You'll have support, but yeah, it's your project. Get quotes from at least 3 contractors, verify their licensing and insurance, negotiate the best price, schedule the installation to minimize disruption, and oversee the work to ensure it meets code. Crawford counted off on his fingers. And you've got 1 week to have it done before the current heater dies, and we've got 200 people without hot water. 1 week. Problem? No, no problem. Ethan's heart was racing, but he forced confidence into his voice. I'll get it done. Crawford's expression was unreadable. We'll see. Ethan spent the next 6 days living and breathing water heater specifications. He called contractors, compared quotes, checked references, negotiated prices. He discovered that 2 of the 3 vendors in the file were overcharging by almost 30% compared to market rates. He found a 4th contractor with excellent reviews and better pricing, negotiated them down another 5%, and scheduled the installation for Sunday when Building C had minimal occupancy. The installation itself was a disaster. The contractor showed up 2 hours late. The new water heater didn't fit through the mechanical room door and had to be hoisted through an exterior window. The existing plumbing connections didn't match the new unit's specifications and had to be modified on the fly. What was supposed to be a 4-hour job stretched to 9 hours. Ethan stayed on site the entire time, watching, learning, asking questions, making sure every code requirement was met. By 7 p.m., he was exhausted, filthy from crawling around the mechanical room, and fairly certain he'd failed his first major test. Crawford showed up at 7:30, inspected the installation personally, and checked every connection and valve. Functional, he said finally. Meets code. Came in under budget. He looked at Ethan. You look like hell. It took way longer than it should have. First time always does. You compensated, you stayed on top of it, and you got it done. Crawford headed for the door, then paused. Not bad, Mercer. Not bad at all. The simple words of approval felt better than any raise could have. Monday morning, Ethan arrived at his desk to find a note from Crawford. See me. His stomach dropped. Had he missed something? Made an error in the water heater installation? He found Crawford in his office, reviewing reports. The older man looked up and gestured to the chair. Close the door. Ethan's anxiety spiked as he obeyed. Crawford set down his papers. You've been here 5 weeks. Yes. Your probation period is 6 months. I know. I'm recommending we cut it to 3. Ethan's brain stuttered. What? You heard me. 3 months instead of 6. You've picked up in 5 weeks what takes most people 3 months to learn. You work harder than anyone on my team, you don't complain, and you actually give a damn about doing things right. Crawford's expression was serious. I wasn't sold on this arrangement when it started. Thought it was executive interference, favoritism, whatever. But I was wrong. You've earned your place here. The words hit Ethan like a wave. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. 3-month probation means 3 months until you're eligible for the full benefits package, including the Education Assistance Program. Crawford pulled out a form, which means your daughter can apply for the Dependent Scholarship Program this fall instead of waiting until next year. Ethan stared at the form, not trusting himself to speak. The application deadline is June 1st. If she qualifies, and I'm guessing with your financial situation she will, the program covers full tuition, books, and fees for any accredited institution. Undergraduate, graduate, medical school, whatever. Medical school. For Lily. I don't know what to say, Ethan managed. Say you'll keep doing what you're doing and go home at a reasonable hour tonight. You've been running yourself ragged, and it's starting to show. Ethan left Crawford's office feeling like he was floating. He pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Chen. Can you keep Lily for another hour tonight? I want to pick up something special for dinner. Of course, of course. Good news? The best news. That evening, Ethan and Lily sat together on their worn couch, eating takeout Chinese food, a luxury they rarely afforded, while Ethan explained what the scholarship program meant. So I can really go to medical school? Lily asked, her eyes wide. Even though it's expensive? Even though it's expensive, the company will pay for all of it. Because of your new job. Because of my new job. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she set down her chopsticks and looked at him with an intensity that reminded him painfully of her mother. Dad, that day you came home early and took me for ice cream. Something big happened, didn't it? Something more than just a new job? She was too smart, too perceptive. Yeah, baby, something big happened. Will you tell me about it someday? Ethan pulled her close. Someday. When you're older. Okay. She snuggled against him, content with the promise. Dad? I'm really proud of you. The tears came before he could stop them, silent and overwhelming. He held his daughter close and let himself feel, for just a moment, the full weight of how far they'd come from that terrifying moment in Vanessa Hart's office. 5 weeks ago, he'd been an invisible janitor, one disaster away from losing everything. Now he was building a future he'd thought was impossible, and somehow, impossibly, it was just the beginning. 3 months into his new position, Ethan received an email that made his blood run cold. The subject line read, Executive Leadership Meeting. Your presence required. He stared at the message, his coffee going cold in his hand. Executive leadership meetings were the domain of vice presidents and C-suite executives, not facilities coordinators who'd been janitors less than 100 days ago. Crawford appeared at his cubicle entrance, his expression giving nothing away. You got the email. Yeah, is this... Did I do something wrong? Opposite. The CEO wants facilities represented at the quarterly review. You're going. Ethan's stomach dropped. Me? Not you? I'll be there too, but she specifically requested you attend. Crawford's tone was matter-of-fact, but something flickered in his eyes. Apparently you've been making an impression. I don't understand. You will. Meetings at 2. Conference room A on the executive floor. Don't be late. and bring the Building C project file. They're going to ask questions about cost savings. The morning crawled by in agonizing slow motion. Ethan tried to focus on reviewing maintenance schedules, but his mind kept circling back to the meeting. He'd avoided the executive floor since that morning in Vanessa's office, taking stairs instead of elevators, finding excuses to work in other buildings. The thought of sitting in a room full of executives while they scrutinized his work made his palms sweat. At 1:30, he changed into the spare dress shirt he now kept in his desk drawer and reviewed the Building C file for the dozenth time. The water heater replacement had come in 28% under the original budget projection while upgrading to a more efficient model. Good numbers, solid work. So why did he feel like he was walking toward an execution? Crawford met him outside conference room A at precisely 1:55 p.m. The facilities director looked completely at ease in his polo shirt and khakis, unbothered by the suits filing into the room around them. "Relax," Crawford said quietly. "You know your stuff. Just answer their questions directly and don't oversell." "Easy for you to say. I've been doing this for 15 years. You'll get used to it." Crawford pulled open the heavy door. "After you." The conference room was massive, dominated by a table that could seat 30 people. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic city view. Abstract art that probably cost more than Ethan's annual salary hung on the walls. A dozen executives were already seated, laptops open, conversations humming with the casual confidence of people who made million-dollar decisions before lunch. Ethan recognized a few faces from company newsletters and internal communications. Robert Chen, CFO, Margaret Lawson, VP of Operations, David Torres, Chief Technology Officer, and at the head of the table, reviewing something on her tablet with complete focus, sat Vanessa Hart. She looked up as they entered, her expression neutral and professional. "Tom, Ethan, good, everyone's here, let's get started." Ethan took a seat near Crawford, trying to make himself as small as possible. Vanessa launched into the meeting without preamble, reviewing quarterly performance metrics with the kind of surgical precision that had built her reputation. Revenue was up 7%. Operating costs had decreased by 3%. Client retention was at an all-time high. "Which brings us to facilities," Vanessa said, her eyes moving to Crawford. "Tom, your department showed a 12% reduction in operating costs this quarter while simultaneously improving service quality scores. Walk us through that." Crawford stood, completely comfortable with the room's attention. The cost reduction came from three main initiatives. First, we renegotiated our HVAC maintenance contract, saving approximately $60,000 annually. Second, we implemented a preventative maintenance schedule that reduced emergency repair calls by 30%. Third, we upgraded several major systems strategically, choosing higher efficiency models that cost more upfront but reduce ongoing operational expenses. "The Building C water heater replacement," Vanessa said. It wasn't a question. "Exactly. That project is a good example of the new approach we're taking." Crawford gestured to Ethan. "My coordinator can walk you through the specifics." Every eye in the room turned toward Ethan. His mouth went dry. Crawford gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. Ethan stood, his legs feeling unsteady, and opened the project file with hands that trembled slightly. The original quote for the Building C water heater replacement was $42,000. The existing unit was a standard efficiency model at the end of its service life. Instead of doing a direct replacement, I researched high-efficiency alternatives and found we could upgrade to a condensing water heater for $38,000, $4,000 less than the original quote, while reducing energy consumption by approximately 30%. He pulled out the cost analysis he'd prepared, passing copies around the table. "The higher efficiency model will save an estimated $6,000 per year in energy costs, which means the upgrade pays for itself in 8 months and continues saving money after that. Total project cost came in at $30,000 after negotiation, which is 28% under the original budget." Margaret Lawson, the VP of Operations, studied the analysis. "You negotiated the contractors down by $8,000? "Yes, ma'am. I found that 2 of the original vendors in our approved contractor list were significantly overpricing compared to market rates. I brought in a 4th contractor with excellent references and better pricing, then used competitive bidding to negotiate all of them down." "That's impressive work." Lawson's tone carried genuine approval. How long have you been in this role? 3 months, ma'am. Her eyebrows rose. 3 months. And you identified that our vendor list was overpriced? Ethan glanced at Crawford, who gave him a slight nod to continue. I noticed that several of our contracts seemed high compared to industry standards, so I started researching market rates. The HVAC contract that Tom mentioned earlier, that was also significantly overpriced. We're now using a new vendor who's providing better service at a lower cost. Robert Chen, the CFO, leaned forward. How many other contracts have you identified as potentially overpriced? I've reviewed all of our facilities-related vendor agreements. Out of 23 contracts, I found 7 that were charging above market rate by 15% or more. Ethan felt his confidence growing as he spoke about work he knew inside and out. I've prepared a preliminary analysis with recommendations for renegotiation or vendor replacement. Implementing all of them could save approximately $200,000 annually. A murmur ran through the room. Chen made a note on his tablet, his expression thoughtful. Vanessa's face remained neutral, but something in her eyes suggested satisfaction. That analysis, is it ready for review? Yes, ma'am. I can have it on your desk this afternoon if you'd like. Do that. She turned to Crawford. Tom, your new coordinator seems to have a talent for finding inefficiencies. He does, Crawford agreed. Best hire I've made in years. The casual praise from his usually gruff supervisor made Ethan's chest tighten with pride. The meeting continued for another hour, covering other departments and initiatives, but Ethan barely heard it. His mind was still processing what had just happened. He'd presented to the executive leadership team. They'd listened. They'd been impressed. When the meeting finally concluded, executives filed out in clusters of conversation. Ethan gathered his materials, preparing to follow Crawford out, when Vanessa's voice stopped him. Ethan, stay back a moment. Crawford glanced between them, then nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Suddenly, the massive conference room felt very small. Vanessa stood by the windows, looking out at the city skyline, just as she had in her office 3 months ago. The parallel wasn't lost on Ethan. That was good work today, she said without turning around. Thank you, ma'am. How are you finding the position, honestly? Ethan considered sugarcoating his answer, then decided against it. She'd asked for honesty. Challenging, overwhelming sometimes, but good, really good. Tom tells me you've been putting in 60-hour weeks. I have a lot to learn. You do, but you also have a daughter who needs her father present, not just providing for her. Vanessa turned to face him. I'm going to tell you something I wish someone had told me years ago. You can't pour from an empty cup. If you burn yourself out trying to prove you deserve this opportunity, you'll fail. Not because you're not capable, but because no one is capable of sustaining that pace indefinitely. The words hit harder than any criticism could have. I just want to make sure I don't let you down. You won't. You've already proven yourself 10 times over. The vendor analysis alone is worth more than most coordinators accomplish in their first year. She crossed her arms, her expression softening slightly. But I didn't give you this job so you could work yourself into the ground. I gave it to you so you could build a better life for yourself and Lily. That requires you to actually have a life. Yes, ma'am. How is Lily doing? Still wanting to be a doctor? The fact that Vanessa remembered their conversation from 3 months ago caught him off guard. She is. She talks about medical school constantly now. Good. Make sure you're around to see her get there. Vanessa's voice carried a weight of experience. I spent my 20s and 30s building this company. I missed birthdays, holidays, everything that wasn't directly related to work. And I succeeded, obviously. But there's a cost to that kind of single-minded focus. Make sure you're counting that cost before you pay it. Ethan nodded, unable to find adequate words. You can go, Vanessa said, returning her attention to the window. And Ethan, good work today. Really excellent work. He left the conference room feeling like he'd just received advice from a general who'd fought and won 1,000 battles, the kind of wisdom that only came from living it. Crawford was waiting by the elevators, trying and failing to hide a smile. So? What'd she say? To stop working so much. Crawford laughed, a genuine bark of amusement. Called you out, did she? Good. Maybe you'll actually listen to the CEO since you won't listen to me. They rode down in comfortable silence. As the elevator opened on the 8th floor, Crawford said, "You did well in there today. Really well. I was skeptical about this whole thing at first, but you've made me a believer." "Thanks, Tom. That means a lot." "Yeah, well, don't let it go to your head. You've still got plenty to learn." But Crawford's tone was warm, almost paternal. "Now go finish that vendor analysis and then go home at a reasonable hour. That's an order." "Yes, sir." "What did I tell you about calling me, sir?" Ethan grinned. Old habits. That evening, Ethan picked up Lily from school himself for the first time in weeks. She was surprised to see him waiting at the gate, her face lighting up with delighted shock. "Dad, you're here." "I'm here." He swept her into a hug. "Thought we could do something fun this afternoon. Your choice." "Really? Anything?" "Anything." Lily's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Can we go to the Science Museum? They have a new human body exhibit that shows how all the organs work." Of course, his daughter wanted to go to an educational exhibit about anatomy. Science Museum it is. They spent 3 hours wandering through exhibits about the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, the respiratory system. Lily absorbed every piece of information with the hungry focus of someone who'd found their calling. She stood in front of a display about the lungs, reading every placard with intense concentration. "Dad, look at this." She pointed to a diagram showing healthy lungs versus lungs affected by asthma. "That's what my airways look like when I have an attack. They get all narrow and inflamed." Ethan studied the display, seeing for the first time a visual representation of what his daughter lived with every day. The narrowed airways, the reduced airflow, the inflammation. It made his chest hurt just looking at it. "It's amazing that medicine can help with that," Lily continued. "Like, the inhalers open up the airways and the preventative medicine reduces the inflammation. It's like fixing a broken system." "Is that why you want to be a doctor? To fix broken systems?" Lily thought about it seriously. "I want to help people who feel like they can't breathe, because I know how scary that is. And I know how amazing it feels when someone knows how to help you." She looked up at him with those wise, too old eyes. "Like you, Dad. You always know how to help me when I'm scared." Ethan pulled her close, his eyes burning. "You're going to be an incredible doctor, Lil." "I know," she said with the absolute confidence of an 8-year-old. "I'm going to be the best." As they drove home, Lily chattered about medical school and residencies and specialties, her dreams spilling out in excited rushes. Ethan listened, making encouraging noises, while his mind drifted to the scholarship application sitting on his desk at work. 3 more weeks until his probation officially ended. 3 more weeks until Lily's future became a guaranteed possibility instead of a desperate hope. The next morning brought an unexpected challenge. Ethan arrived at 7 a.m. to find Crawford already at his desk, his expression grim. "We've got a situation. Building A's main electrical panel is showing irregular voltage. Could be nothing, could be a serious problem." "How serious?" "Serious enough that if it fails completely, we lose power to the entire building. 300 employees, critical servers, everything." Crawford was already moving toward the door. "I've called our electrical contractor, but they can't get here for 2 hours. I need you to help me run diagnostics while we wait." They spent the next 90 minutes in Building A's electrical room, a cramped space filled with panels, breakers, and enough voltage to kill someone if handled incorrectly. Crawford walked Ethan through the testing process, showing him how to identify irregular readings, check connections, and assess risk levels. "There," Crawford pointed to a specific breaker. "See that fluctuation? That's not normal." Ethan studied the multimeter readings. "Could it cause a failure?" "Not immediately, but if it degrades further, yeah. We could lose the whole panel." Crawford made a note on his clipboard. "This is what I mean about preventative maintenance. If we catch this now and replace that breaker, it's a $200 part and an hour of work. If we wait and the panel fails, $20,000 minimum, plus however many thousands in lost productivity while the building's dark." The electrical contractor arrived at 9 and confirmed Crawford's diagnosis. They scheduled the breaker replacement for the following weekend to minimize disruption. "Good catch," the contractor said to Crawford. "Another month and you'd have had a real mess on your hands." After the contractor left, Crawford turned to Ethan. You see how this works? We're not heroes when we prevent problems. Nobody notices when things work correctly, but the moment something fails, we're incompetent. Sounds frustrating. It is, but it's also the job. Crawford headed back toward the office. Which is why you document everything, justify every expenditure, and never assume people understand the value of what you do. You have to prove it constantly. That afternoon, Ethan submitted the vendor analysis to Vanessa's office as requested. 2 days later, he received an email from Robert Chen requesting a meeting to discuss implementation strategy. The CFO's office was somehow even more intimidating than the executive conference room. Chen was a slight man in his 50s, with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of sharp intelligence that made Ethan feel like every word was being analyzed for hidden meaning. "Your vendor analysis is impressive," Chen said without preamble. "200,000 in potential annual savings is significant, but implementation is going to be complicated." "How so, sir?" "Several of these vendors have contracts with auto-renewal clauses. Breaking them early will trigger termination fees." Chen pulled up a spreadsheet on his monitor. "The HVAC contract alone has a $50,000 early termination penalty." Ethan had anticipated this. "Yes, sir. But if we're saving $60,000 annually with the new vendor, the termination fee pays for itself in 10 months. And then we continue saving money for the life of the new contract, which is typically 3 to 5 years. You've thought this through." "I tried to, sir. I also identified which contracts are due for renewal in the next 6 months, so we can transition those without penalty. That accounts for 4 of the 7 overpriced vendors." Chen studied him over his glasses. "How old are you, Mr. Mercer?" 33, sir." "And you've been in facilities management for how long?" 3 months, sir. But I was in janitorial for 4 years before that." 4 years as a janitor, 3 months as a coordinator, and you've identified inefficiencies that my finance team missed during their last audit." Chen's tone was dry. "Either you're exceptionally talented or we need a new finance team." I know what it's like when every dollar matters, sir, so I pay attention to where money goes." Something shifted in Chen's expression. "Fair enough. I'm approving implementation of your recommendations. Work with Tom to phase in the vendor transitions. And Mr. Mercer? Keep looking for inefficiencies. Clearly, you have an eye for them." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." As Ethan left Chen's office, his phone buzzed with a text from Crawford. "How'd it go?" "He approved everything," Ethan typed back. "Told you, you're making us look good." The praise felt surreal. 6 months ago, he'd been invisible. Now executives were asking his opinion and approving his recommendations. The following weeks settled into a demanding but sustainable rhythm. Ethan started leaving work at 5:30 instead of 8, spending evenings with Lily instead of buried in manuals. He discovered that Crawford was right. It was a marathon, and burning himself out wouldn't help anyone. He also discovered that he genuinely loved the work, the puzzle of building systems, the satisfaction of solving problems, the tangible impact of making things work better. It all clicked in a way no job ever had before. His former janitorial colleagues treated him with a mixture of pride and distance now. Some were genuinely happy for his success. Others seemed to view his promotion as a reminder of their own stuck positions. Marcus, the security guard who'd congratulated him that first day, remained friendly but called him Mr. Mercer now instead of just Ethan. The shift in dynamics felt strange and uncomfortable, a reminder that success often meant leaving people behind. Mrs. Chen, at least, remained unchanged. She still fed him when he looked too thin, still watched Lily without complaint, still treated him like the struggling single dad she'd adopted 3 years ago. "You're doing good," she told him one evening when he picked up Lily, "but don't forget where you come from." "I won't, Mrs. Chen." "Good. Because fancy job or not, you still leave wet towel on bathroom floor like teenager." She swatted his arm affectionately. "Now go. Lily made you a picture at school today. She wants to show you." The picture was a crayon drawing of 2 figures labeled Dad and Me, standing in front of a building labeled Hospital. Above them, in Lily's careful handwriting, "Someday." Ethan hung it on the refrigerator next to her other artwork, his throat tight with emotion. "Someday" was starting to feel less like a fantasy and more like an actual possibility. The 3-month mark of Ethan's probation arrived on a Tuesday. Crawford called him into his office first thing in the morning, his expression serious. Close the door. Ethan's stomach knotted despite Crawford's earlier promise about cutting the probation period. Had something changed? Crawford pulled out an official-looking document. This is your performance review, required for probation completion. He slid it across the desk. Ethan scanned the form, seeing ratings and comments in Crawford's precise handwriting. Every category was marked exceeds expectations. The final summary read, employee has demonstrated exceptional aptitude for facilities management, exceeding first quarter benchmarks in all areas. Recommendation? Immediate advancement to permanent status with full benefits activation. As of today, you're off probation, Crawford said. Full salary, full benefits, everything. Relief crashed through Ethan so intensely he felt dizzy. Thank you, Tom. Don't thank me. You earned it. Crawford stood and extended his hand. Welcome to the team, Coordinator Mercer. Permanently. They shook hands, and Ethan thought he saw something almost paternal in Crawford's usually stern expression. Now get out of my office and go file your daughter's scholarship application. Deadline's Friday. You remembered? I remember everything important. Go. Ethan practically ran to his desk, pulling up the scholarship application he'd been preparing for weeks. He'd gathered every required document, written and rewritten Lily's essay, checked and double-checked every form field. Now, finally, he could submit it. He clicked the submit button and watched the confirmation screen appear. Application received. Under review. Decisions by July 1st. His hands were shaking. Everything okay? Crawford appeared at his cubicle entrance. I just submitted Lily's scholarship application. Good. She'll get it. How do you know? Because her father is you, and people like you don't raise quitters. Crawford's voice was matter-of-fact. She'll get it. She'll go to college. She'll go to medical school, and someday you'll sit in an audience watching her graduate. That's how this story ends. Ethan's vision blurred. I hope you're right. I'm always right. Ask anyone. Crawford walked away, his gruff demeanor firmly back in place. That evening, Ethan took Lily out for ice cream to celebrate, though he didn't tell her exactly what they were celebrating yet. She ordered her usual double scoop and settled into their favorite booth with the satisfied smile of a kid living her best life. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. That day you came home early and everything changed. What really happened? Ethan set down his spoon, considering how much to tell her. She was 8, but she was also old enough to understand more than he sometimes gave her credit for. I made a mistake at work, he said carefully. A big one that could have gotten me fired. Lily's eyes widened. What did you do? I walked into the wrong office at the wrong time, and instead of getting angry, the person in that office asked me questions about my life. About you. About me? About why I worked so hard. About what I was trying to provide for you. Ethan's voice grew thick. And instead of punishing me for my mistake, she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. She gave me a chance to be more than I thought I could be. Lily processed this seriously. So your mistake turned into something good? The best thing that ever happened to us. Second best, he corrected, ruffling her hair. You're the best thing. Obviously, Lily said with a grin. Then, more thoughtfully, do you think I'll get to meet her someday? The person who gave you the chance? Maybe. Someday. I want to say thank you, because if she helped you, she helped me too. Ethan's chest ached with love for this incredible kid. You can tell her that yourself when the time is right. They finished their ice cream as the sun set outside the shop window, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. And for the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to simply exist in the moment, without worrying about what crisis tomorrow might bring. Tomorrow could take care of itself. Tonight, he was exactly where he needed to be. The email arrived on July 1st at 9:47 a.m. Ethan was in the middle of reviewing a proposal for upgrading Building D's HVAC system when his phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced at the screen absently, expecting another routine facilities request, and felt his heart stop. Subject: Nexus Corporation Dependent Scholarship Program. Decision letter. His hands went numb. For 10 full seconds, he couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except stare at those words. Ethan, you okay? Crawford's voice came from somewhere far away. He looked up to find his supervisor standing at the cubicle entrance, concern creasing his weathered face. The scholarship decision. It just came. Crawford's expression shifted to understanding. Well, open it. I can't. Ethan's voice came out strangled. What if she didn't get it? What if... Open the damn email, Mercer. With shaking fingers, Ethan tapped the notification. The email opened and he forced himself to read the first line. Dear Mr. Mercer, we are pleased to inform you that Lily Mercer has been selected as a recipient of the Nexus Corporation Dependent Scholarship Program. The rest of the words blurred into incomprehensible text as tears flooded his vision. He set the phone down carefully, afraid he might drop it, and pressed his palms against his eyes. She got it, he managed. She got it. Crawford's hand landed on his shoulder, a rare gesture from the typically reserved man. Told you she would. Congratulations. Ethan nodded, unable to speak past the emotion crushing his chest. Lily's entire future, college, medical school, everything she'd dreamed about, had just become real. Take an early lunch, Crawford said gruffly. Go tell her in person. I'll cover for you. You sure? Get out of here before I change my mind. Ethan grabbed his keys and practically ran to the parking garage. The drive to Lily's elementary school took 15 minutes that felt like hours. He checked in at the office, explained he needed to see his daughter for a family matter, and waited in the small conference room they used for parent meetings. When Lily walked in, escorted by her teacher, Mrs. Palmer, confusion wrinkled her small face. Dad, what's wrong? Did something happen? He realized she'd probably never been pulled from class before. In her experience, unexpected visits from parents meant emergencies. Nothing's wrong, baby. Everything's perfect. He knelt down to her level. I just got some news that I couldn't wait to tell you. What news? Remember the scholarship application we submitted for college? Lily's eyes went wide. Did I get it? You got it, Lil. Full scholarship. Undergraduate, graduate, medical school, all of it. For a moment, she just stared at him, processing. Then her face crumpled and she launched herself into his arms, crying and laughing simultaneously. Really, 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 really. Ethan held her tight, his own tears falling freely now. You're going to be a doctor, baby. Nothing's going to stop you. Mrs. Palmer, still standing in the doorway, wiped at her own eyes. That's wonderful news, Lily. Congratulations. Lily pulled back from the hug, her face radiant despite the tears. Can I tell Emma? And Joshua? And you can tell anyone you want, Ethan laughed. She hugged him once more, fierce and quick, then ran back toward her classroom, already calling out the news to her teacher. Ethan stood there in the empty conference room, feeling like gravity had shifted beneath his feet. 4 months ago, medical school for Lily had been an impossible dream, something he could barely let himself imagine. Now it was guaranteed. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number that he recognized immediately. I heard the good news. Well done, both of you. VH. Ethan stared at the message, wondering how Vanessa had found out so quickly, then realized she'd probably been watching for the scholarship decisions as closely as he had. The thought that the CEO of a Fortune 500 company cared enough to track his daughter's application made his throat tight all over again. Thank you, he typed back, for everything. The response came seconds later. You earned it. Now get back to work. Those vendor contracts won't renegotiate themselves. Despite the businesslike tone, Ethan could almost hear the warmth behind the words. The rest of July and August passed in a blur of challenging projects and steady growth. Ethan took on increasingly complex assignments. A complete renovation of Building F's mechanical systems, negotiating a new security contract that saved the company $90,000 annually, implementing a computerized maintenance management system that improved efficiency across all properties. With each project, his confidence grew. The imposter syndrome that had plagued his early months began to fade, replaced by the solid knowledge that he'd earned his place through hard work and proven results. Crawford continued to be a demanding but fair mentor, pushing Ethan to think strategically, to see the bigger picture beyond individual projects. Their relationship had evolved from supervisor and subordinate to something approaching genuine friendship, though Crawford would never admit it. You're getting too comfortable, Crawford announced one afternoon in late August. That's dangerous. Ethan looked up from his desk. What? Comfortable, complacent? You've mastered the coordinator role. Time to start thinking bigger. Bigger how? Crawford dropped a folder on his desk. That's the org chart for the entire facilities department. Study it. Because in 2 years, maybe 3, I'm retiring. And someone's going to need to take over as director of facilities management. Implications hit Ethan like a freight train. I'm saying if you keep performing at this level, you'd be a strong candidate for my position. Not a guarantee, Crawford added quickly. You'd be competing against people with more experience, more credentials, but you'd be in the running. Ethan opened the folder, seeing the departmental structure, the reporting lines, the scope of responsibility that came with Crawford's role. It was massive, overseeing operations for 12 buildings, managing a team of 40 people, a budget in the millions. I don't have a degree, Ethan said quietly. Don't most directors need? Most do, which is why you're going to get one. Crawford pulled out another document. The company has a tuition assistance program separate from the dependent scholarship. You can take classes part-time, get your bachelor's in business management or facilities administration. They'll pay for 80% of it. I can't go to school and work full-time and be a father. You can do online classes, 2 courses per semester. It'll take you 5 years, but you'll have the degree and the experience. Crawford's expression was serious. I'm not saying this is going to be easy. I'm saying it's possible if you want it badly enough. Ethan thought about Lily, about the example he was setting for her. She'd be in middle school when he graduated, old enough to understand what it meant that her father had gone back to school while working and raising her. I want it, he said. Good. Then make it happen. That evening, Ethan sat down with Lily after dinner and explained his plan. She listened with the serious attention she gave to everything important, her 8-year-old face thoughtful. So you'll be doing homework too, she asked. Looks like it. Can we do homework together sometimes? The image of the two of them sitting at the kitchen table, both working on assignments, made him smile. Yeah, baby, we can do homework together. Cool, Lily grinned. I'll help you if you get stuck. I'm counting on it. He enrolled in classes that started in September, choosing business management as his major. The first few weeks were brutal. Balancing work, parenting, and coursework felt impossible. He attended online lectures after Lily went to bed, wrote papers on weekends, studied during lunch breaks. But gradually, he found a rhythm and discovered that he actually enjoyed learning in a way he never had when he was younger and directionless. Now education had purpose. It was a tool for building the future he wanted, not just a requirement to be endured. Mrs. Chen, as always, provided crucial support. She watched Lily during the occasional evening when Ethan had a live online class or study group session, never asking for extra payment, always insisting he was family now. You work hard, you study hard, you be good father, she said firmly. I help. That's what family does. Autumn brought new challenges. A major storm in October caused flooding in Building B's basement, requiring an emergency response that lasted 48 hours. Ethan coordinated contractors, managed water extraction, supervised repairs, and handled the insurance claims process while operating on minimal sleep and maximum coffee. When it was over, Crawford surveyed the restored basement and nodded his approval. Crisis management. That's the real test of any facilities manager. You handled it well. I mostly just did what you told me to do. You did what needed to be done without falling apart. Trust me, that's rarer than you think. Crawford headed toward the exit, then paused. Get some sleep, Mercer. You look like hell. Ethan went home and slept for 12 hours straight, waking up to find Lily had made him breakfast, badly burned toast and overly sweet orange juice, and left a note. Good job saving the building, Dad. Love you. He kept the note in his wallet. November brought Thanksgiving and the first real family holiday Ethan had been able to properly celebrate in years. He actually took the day off without guilt, cooked a modest turkey dinner with Lily's enthusiastic but chaotic help, and invited Mrs. Chen to join them. What are you thankful for, Dad? Lily asked as they sat around their small dining table. Ethan looked at his daughter, healthy and happy, her inhaler sitting unused on the counter because her new medication regimen was working better than anything they'd tried before. He thought about the job that had changed everything, the scholarship that guaranteed her future, the education he was pursuing to build something even bigger. I'm thankful for second chances, he said quietly, and for people who see potential in places others don't look. Mrs. Chen raised her glass of sparkling cider. To second chances. They clinked glasses, and Lily added, and to being a family. To family, Ethan echoed, his voice rough with emotion. December arrived with unexpected news. Ethan was called to a meeting with Margaret Lawson, the VP of Operations. He'd interacted with her a few times since that first executive meeting, but never one-on-one. Her office was sleek and modern, all glass and chrome. She gestured him to a seat with a business-like efficiency. I'll get straight to the point, Ethan. We're expanding our facilities operations to include 3 new properties we've acquired. Tom has recommended you to lead the integration project. Ethan's mind raced. Lead the project, not assist with it? Lead it. You'd be responsible for assessing the existing systems, developing integration plans, coordinating contractors, managing the budget. Full project ownership. That's usually a senior coordinator or assistant director role. It is, which is why the project comes with a temporary promotion to senior facilities coordinator and a 20% salary increase during the project duration. If you complete it successfully, the promotion and raise become permanent. The numbers spun through Ethan's head. 20% more would mean he could start actually saving money, building an emergency fund, maybe even move to a better apartment. When would this start? January 2nd. You'd have 3 months to complete the integration. Tom will still be your supervisor, but this would be your project. Lawson leaned back in her chair. I won't sugarcoat it. This is a big ask. 3 properties, tight timeline, high visibility. If you succeed, you'll be on the fast track for advancement. If you fail, well, I understand the stakes. Do you want it? Ethan thought about everything he'd learned in the past 8 months. About the water heater project that had seemed impossible at first. About the vendor analysis that had impressed the CFO. About the storm response that had tested his crisis management skills. He'd handled all of it, exceeded expectations on all of it. Yes, he said firmly. I want it. Lawson smiled, the expression transforming her usually stern face. Good. Tom said you'd say yes. Welcome to the senior team, Mr. Mercer. Try not to make me regret this. I won't, ma'am. He walked out of her office in a daze, pulling out his phone to text Crawford. You set me up. The response came immediately. You earned it. Stop questioning yourself and do the damn job. That evening, Ethan picked up Lily early from Mrs. Chen's and took her to their favorite ice cream shop, the same one where they'd celebrated his initial promotion 8 months ago. Are we celebrating something again? Lily asked, wise to the pattern. Another promotion, senior coordinator. That's good, right? That's really good. It means more responsibility, better pay, and more opportunities down the road. Lily ordered her ice cream thoughtfully, then said, Dad, do you like your job now? The question caught him off guard. Yeah, baby, I really do. Why? Because you used to always look tired and sad, like you were carrying something really heavy. But now you look lighter, happier. Her perception, as always, was unnervingly accurate. I am happier. This job, everything that came with it, it changed our lives. Good, Lily grinned around her spoon. You deserve to be happy. So do you, Lil. I am happy. We have ice cream, you have a job you like, I'm going to be a doctor someday, and Mrs. Chen makes really good dumplings. She counted off on her fingers. What else do we need? Ethan laughed, the sound free and genuine. Nothing, baby. We don't need anything else. But even as he said it, he thought about the integration project starting in January, about the college courses he was taking, about the director position that might be possible in a few years. There was still so much to build, so much to achieve, not because they needed it to survive anymore, but because they deserved it. Because Lily deserved a father who showed her that hard work and determination could transform your entire life. The holidays passed in a blur of work, school, and family time. Ethan finished his first semester with 2 A-minuses, results he was absurdly proud of considering he'd been balancing full-time work and single parenthood simultaneously. Lily's school held a winter concert where she sang in the choir, her voice clear and confident. Ethan sat in the audience, his phone recording the performance, overwhelmed by the normalcy of it all. A year ago, he'd missed countless school events because he was working. Now he was present for all of them. On Christmas Eve, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan sat at the kitchen table reviewing the preliminary plans for the integration project. 3 properties, 2 office buildings, and 1 mixed-use complex, each with unique challenges and systems that needed to be brought up to Nexus standards. It was daunting, possibly overwhelming, but for the first time in his life, Ethan looked at a massive challenge and felt excitement instead of dread. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Congratulations on the senior coordinator promotion. You continue to exceed expectations." VH. He stared at the message, still amazed that the CEO tracked his progress this closely. He typed back, "Thank you for giving me the chance to exceed them." Her response, "I gave you the opportunity. You did the rest." "Merry Christmas, Ethan." "Merry Christmas, Ms. Hart." He set down his phone and looked around their small apartment. It wasn't much. The furniture was still secondhand, the carpet still worn, the walls still thin enough to hear neighbors arguing, but it was warm and safe and filled with possibilities that hadn't existed a year ago. Next Christmas, he thought, they might be in a better place. A bigger apartment, maybe. Something with 2 bedrooms so Lily didn't have to sleep on a fold-out couch in the living room anymore. The year after that? Who knew? Maybe he'd be director of facilities by then. Maybe Lily would be in high school, already preparing for college applications. The future stretched out ahead of them, no longer a threatening unknown, but a landscape full of opportunities waiting to be seized. On January 2nd, Ethan stood in front of the senior facilities team and presented his integration project plan. 12 people, coordinators, specialists, contractors, all looking to him for direction. A year ago, he'd been invisible. A janitor nobody noticed. Now he was leading teams, managing budgets, making decisions that affected hundreds of people. Crawford watched from the back of the room, his arms crossed but his expression satisfied. When the presentation ended, the team dispersed to begin their assignments. Crawford approached Ethan, his weathered face showing something that might have been pride. "Not bad, kid. Not bad at all." "Thanks, Tom." "Don't thank me yet. You've got 3 months to pull this off without screwing it up." But Crawford's tone was warm beneath the gruffness. "You're going to do fine." As Ethan returned to his desk to begin the massive undertaking of coordinating 3 simultaneous property integrations, he thought about that morning a year ago when he'd pushed open the wrong door at the wrong time, the moment that should have destroyed everything, the moment that had, instead, built everything. He pulled out his phone and looked at a photo he'd saved. Lily, in her school choir concert, mid-song, her face radiant with joy and confidence. A kid who would never have to worry about affording her dreams. A kid whose future was secure not because of luck, but because her father had been given a chance and had refused to waste it. Ethan set down the phone and opened the first project file. Time to get to work. Time to prove, once again, that Vanessa Hart's faith in him hadn't been misplaced. Time to keep building the life they both deserved. The integration project consumed the first quarter of the year. Ethan worked long hours, but not the unsustainable pace of his early months. He'd learned balance, learned to delegate, learned that being a good leader meant empowering his team rather than trying to do everything himself. The properties presented unique challenges. Building 1 had outdated electrical systems that required complete replacement. Building 2 had chronic plumbing issues stemming from poor original construction. The mixed-use complex had tenant complaints about inconsistent HVAC performance that turned out to be caused by a badly configured automation system. Ethan tackled each problem systematically, bringing in specialists when needed, making tough calls about budget allocations, keeping stakeholders informed of progress and setbacks. By late March, all 3 properties were integrated, operating smoothly, and coming in 5% under budget. Margaret Lawson called him to her office for a final project review. She went through the results with her typical thoroughness, asking pointed questions, challenging his decisions, making him defend his choices. Finally, she closed the file and looked at him directly. "This was a test, Ethan. You know that, right?" "I suspected as much, ma'am. We needed to know if you could handle senior-level responsibility, complex projects, team leadership, budget management under pressure." She stood and extended her hand. "Congratulations. You passed. The promotion to Senior Facilities Coordinator is now permanent, along with the corresponding salary increase. Well done." They shook hands, and Ethan felt a surge of pride so intense it was almost painful. Thank you, ma'am. I won't let you down. You haven't yet. Keep it up. That evening, Ethan picked up Lily from her after-school science club. She'd joined in January and was now the youngest member, and took her out to celebrate. Another promotion? She asked knowingly. Another promotion. You're going to run out of promotions eventually, Dad. He laughed. Maybe, but not yet. They sat in their favorite booth at the ice cream shop, and Lily talked excitedly about the DNA extraction experiment her science club had done with strawberries. Her enthusiasm for science and medicine only grew stronger with each passing month, her dreams becoming more specific and detailed. I think I want to specialize in pulmonology, she announced. That's lung doctors, right? Respiratory system, yeah, because of my asthma. I know what it's like to struggle to breathe, so I want to help other people with lung problems. She spoke with absolute certainty. Dr. Morrison says I'd be really good at it because I understand the patient perspective. You'd be incredible at it, Ethan agreed. I know. She grinned, utterly confident. 10 more years until college, 4 years of that, then medical school, then residency. I've got it all planned out. Sounds like you do. What about you, Dad? What's your plan? Ethan considered the question seriously. Finish my degree in 4 more years, keep taking on bigger projects, maybe become director of facilities eventually. Tom's job? Eventually, yeah, when he retires. You'd be good at that too. Lily paused, then added, We're both going to be successful, aren't we? The certainty in her voice made his chest tight. Yeah, baby, we really are. As they drove home through the city streets, Ethan thought about the journey that had brought them here. From the terrifying moment in Vanessa's office to the stable, hopeful present. From survival mode to actually building something. The future Lily envisioned, college, medical school, a career helping others, was guaranteed now. His future, too, was filled with possibilities he'd never imagined, all because one powerful woman had chosen to see potential instead of a mistake. All because she'd given a janitor a chance to become something more. Ethan glanced at his daughter in the rear-view mirror, already absorbed in a medical textbook she'd checked out from the library. They were going to make it. Not just survive, but truly thrive. And that, Ethan thought as he pulled into their apartment complex, was worth more than all the promotions and raises in the world. The years that followed moved with the strange dual quality of time, simultaneously racing past and unfolding with deliberate purpose. Ethan marked their passage not in calendar dates but in milestones, each one a reminder of how far they'd traveled from that terrifying morning in Vanessa's office. Lily turned 10, then 12, then entered high school with the same fierce determination she'd shown since childhood. Her medical aspirations never wavered. If anything, they intensified. She volunteered at a local hospital, shadowed doctors during summer breaks, and consumed medical journals with the kind of passion most teenagers reserve for social media. Ethan completed his bachelor's degree when Lily was 13, walking across a graduation stage in a rented cap and gown, while his daughter cheered louder than anyone else in the auditorium. Mrs. Chen had come too, tears streaming down her weathered face, proud as any grandmother. 4 years, Crawford had said at the small celebration dinner afterward. Full-time work, single parenting, and you still graduated with honors. You're either crazy or the most stubborn person I've ever met. Can it be both? Ethan had replied with a grin. Crawford had retired 6 months later, and the director of facilities position had opened up exactly as he'd predicted. Ethan had competed against 4 other candidates, all with more traditional credentials and longer tenures. But when the final decision came down, Margaret Lawson had called him to her office with news that still felt surreal. The position is yours if you want it, Ethan. Full director role, appropriate salary, expanded responsibilities. You've earned this. He'd accepted, of course, and discovered that running an entire department was both terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The learning curve was steep, the pressure constant, but he'd faced worse. Much worse. Now, 7 years after that fateful morning, Ethan sat in what had once been Crawford's office, now his, reviewing budget projections for the upcoming fiscal year. At 40 years old, he'd become the youngest director in the company's facilities management history. His team respected him. The executives trusted his judgment. The janitors who'd once been his colleagues now reported up through his department, and he made damn sure they were treated with the dignity he remembered craving during those exhausting night shifts. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Got my SAT scores. You're going to freak out." Ethan's heart jumped. She'd taken the test last month, confident but refusing to predict her results. He called her immediately. "Well?" he demanded when she picked up. "Hello to you too, Dad." He could hear the smile in her voice. "Lily Grace Mercer, if you don't tell me right now." 1,570. Ethan's mind went blank. Out of 1,600? Yes, out of 1,600. What other scale would there be? That's perfect. That's basically perfect. I know. Now the excitement broke through her studied calm. "Mrs. Rodriguez said it puts me in the 99th percentile. She thinks I can get into basically any undergraduate program I want." Pride surged through him so powerfully it hurt. "You brilliant, amazing kid. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you, you know. All those late nights you helped me study while you were doing your own coursework, that meant everything." His throat tightened. "You did this yourself, Lil. This is all you. We did it together, just like everything else." Her voice softened. "I'm thinking about applying early decision to Stanford. Their pre-med program is incredible, and their medical school is one of the best in the country." Stanford. The word carried weight that would have been crushing 7 years ago. Now it was simply the next step. "Then that's where you'll apply," Ethan said firmly, "and that's where you'll get in." "You sound very confident." "I am. You're going to be unstoppable, baby." After they hung up, Ethan sat in his office for a long moment, letting the reality sink in. His daughter, the little girl who'd once struggled to breathe, who'd lived in constant fear of medical bills they couldn't afford, was applying to Stanford University with SAT scores that put her in the top 1% of test takers nationwide. The impossibility of it staggered him. His computer chimed with a calendar reminder. Executive strategy meeting in 15 minutes. Right. Back to work. He gathered his materials and headed to the executive floor, a route that had become routine over the years but still carried echoes of that first terrifying visit. The conference room was already filling with familiar faces. Margaret Lawson, Robert Chen, David Torres, and several other senior leaders he'd worked with countless times. And at the head of the table, reviewing documents with her characteristic focus, sat Vanessa Hart. She looked barely different from 7 years ago, still commanding the room with quiet authority, still exuding the kind of power that came from having built an empire through sheer determination and brilliance. Their interactions over the years had remained professional and relatively sparse. An occasional email about facilities initiatives, brief conversations at company events, the odd text message acknowledging milestones. Vanessa maintained appropriate distance, never showing favoritism, never treating Ethan as anything other than a valued director who'd earned his position through merit. But sometimes, when she looked at him during meetings, Ethan caught something in her expression, satisfaction, perhaps, or quiet pride, that suggested she was watching his journey with more interest than she'd ever admit. "Let's get started," Vanessa said, and the room fell silent. "We're here to discuss expansion plans for the next 5 years. Robert, walk us through the financial projections." The meeting proceeded with its usual efficiency, covering market analysis, growth strategies, and infrastructure needs. When the discussion turned to facilities requirements for potential new properties, Vanessa turned to Ethan. "What's our capacity for expansion from a facilities management perspective?" Ethan had prepared for this question. "We can handle moderate expansion with our current team structure, 3 to 4 new properties over the next year without significant hiring. Beyond that, we'd need to add personnel and potentially restructure the department to maintain our service quality standards. Define significant hiring. 2 additional senior coordinators, 4 to 6 maintenance specialists, expanded contractor networks. I've outlined 3 scaling models depending on the growth trajectory." He distributed the analysis he'd prepared. Each model includes cost projections, hiring timelines, and risk assessments. Vanessa reviewed his document, her expression thoughtful. "Your conservative model assumes 4 new properties. The aggressive model assumes 12. What would you recommend?" "The moderate model, 8 properties. It balances growth with manageable risk and gives us flexibility to adjust if market conditions change." Robert, does that align with the financial projections? The CFO nodded. It does. And Ethan's cost estimates are realistic based on our current spending patterns. Then that's our baseline. Vanessa made a note. Ethan, prepare a detailed implementation plan for the moderate expansion scenario. I want it ready for board review next month. Yes, ma'am. The meeting continued for another hour, but Ethan's mind was already working through the implementation plan, identifying potential challenges, strategizing solutions. This was the kind of high-stakes project he'd once thought impossibly beyond his capabilities. Now it was just another Tuesday. As the meeting concluded and executives filed out, Vanessa's voice stopped him at the door. Ethan, a moment. His stomach still did that nervous flip when she used that phrase, muscle memory from 7 years ago. He turned back as the last person left and the door clicked shut. Vanessa stood by the windows, looking out at the city exactly as she had that first morning. The parallel was deliberate, Ethan suspected. I heard about Lily's SAT scores, she said without preamble. 1,570. That's exceptional. He shouldn't be surprised that she knew. Vanessa made it her business to know things. Thank you. She's looking at Stanford. Excellent choice. Their pre-med program would be perfect for her. Vanessa turned to face him. Do you ever think about that morning, Ethan, when you walked into my office? The direct question caught him off guard. Every day, actually. So do I. Her expression was unreadable. Do you know why I offered you that opportunity? You said you saw potential, that you believed in paying forward the chance someone gave you. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Vanessa moved to her desk, leaning against it in a pose that echoed their first real conversation. The whole truth is that I saw myself in you. The desperation, the exhaustion, the absolute terror of one mistake destroying everything you'd fought to protect. I recognized that look because I wore it myself for years. Ethan had suspected as much, but had never heard her say it so directly. I built this company from nothing, Vanessa continued. Literally nothing. Sleeping in my car, eating discount protein bars, showering at the gym. I know what it's like to be invisible, to work yourself half to death just to survive, to feel like the world has decided your potential doesn't matter because you don't fit the right profile. She crossed her arms, her gaze steady on his. When you walked into my office that morning, terrified you'd lose everything over an innocent mistake, I saw an opportunity to do what Richard Sutton did for me, to prove that potential exists in unexpected places, that character matters more than credentials, that the janitor emptying trash cans might be more capable than the MBA graduate in the corner office. I don't know what to say, Ethan managed. Don't say anything. Just keep proving me right. A faint smile touched her lips. You've exceeded every expectation I had, Ethan. Your work as director has been exemplary. Your team respects you. The other executives trust your judgment. You've become exactly what I hoped you would, a leader who earned his position through merit and maintains it through excellence. The praise made his chest tight. I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. You earned everything through your own effort. Vanessa's tone was firm. I opened a door. You walked through it and built something remarkable on the other side. That's all you. She returned to the window, her silhouette framed against the city skyline. Lily is going to be an extraordinary doctor. You know that, right? I do. She has your determination, your work ethic, your refusal to let circumstances define her limitations. Vanessa glanced back at him. But she also has something you didn't have at her age, the absolute certainty that she can achieve anything she sets her mind to. You gave her that. The security, the stability, the unwavering belief in her potential. That's worth more than any scholarship. Ethan's vision blurred slightly. She's the reason for everything. Every late night, every difficult project, every moment I wanted to quit but didn't, it was all for her. I know. That's what makes you a good father. Vanessa's expression softened almost imperceptibly. My only regret is that I spent so many years building this company that I never had time to build a family. I don't regret my choices, but I recognize their cost. You've managed to balance both. That's impressive. I had help. A lot of help. We all need help. The trick is recognizing it and accepting it with grace. She straightened, her professional demeanor sliding back into place. Speaking of which, I'm increasing the facilities department budget by 12% next fiscal year. Use it to build the team you'll need for the expansion. Hire carefully, train thoroughly, and maintain the standards you've established. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Stop thanking me. Just do excellent work. That's all the thanks I need. But her eyes carried warmth beneath the businesslike tone. Now, get out of my office and go prepare that implementation plan. And Ethan, take the evening off. Celebrate Lily's scores properly. The plan can wait until tomorrow. He left her office feeling like he'd just experienced something profound, though he couldn't quite articulate what. The CEO of a Fortune 500 company had just revealed her personal philosophy, her regrets, her belief in him. It felt like being entrusted with something precious and fragile. That evening, Ethan took Lily and Mrs. Chen to the nicest restaurant he could afford. Not the modest places they usually frequented, but a real upscale establishment with cloth napkins and a wine list. Mrs. Chen protested the expense until Lily gave her a look that could have withered steel. "We're celebrating, Mrs. Chen. Stop arguing and order something expensive." The elderly woman laughed, delighted. "When did you become so bossy?" "I learned from the best," Lily said sweetly, making both adults laugh. Over dinner, they talked about college applications, about Lily's dreams for the future, about the long journey that had brought them to this moment of celebration. Mrs. Chen regaled them with stories about Lily as a toddler, back when Ethan was still working night shifts and sleeping in 3-hour increments. "You were such a tiny thing," Mrs. Chen said, her eyes misty with memory. "So small, so sick sometimes, but so fierce. Even then, you had determination." "She gets that from her dad," Ethan said. "She gets that from both her parents," Mrs. Chen corrected gently. "You're Sarah. She had that strength too. I see her in Lily every day." Lily reached across the table and squeezed Ethan's hand. They didn't talk about Sarah often. The loss was still too tender, even after 10 years. But moments like this made her absence particularly acute. She should have been here to see their daughter's triumph, should have been part of this celebration. "Mom would be proud," Lily said softly, reading his thoughts like she always could, "of both of us." "She would," Ethan agreed, his voice rough. "So incredibly proud." The applications went out in October. Stanford, early decision, with backup applications to Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and several other top programs. Lily approached the process with the same meticulous attention she applied to everything, crafting essays that were honest and compelling, gathering recommendation letters from teachers who praised her brilliance and dedication. Ethan read her personal statement and found himself crying in his office, overwhelmed by her eloquence in describing their journey, her gratitude for the opportunities she'd been given, her determination to use her education to help others struggling with respiratory conditions. She wrote about it without naming him directly, describing a father who'd worked 3 jobs to afford her medications, who'd never let her see his exhaustion, who taught her that circumstances don't define limits, determination does. "You can't submit this," he'd told her, his voice cracking. "It's going to make me cry every time I think about it." "That's kind of the point, Dad. It's supposed to be emotional." She'd hugged him tight. "Besides, it's all true. You're the reason I believe I can do impossible things, because I watched you do them first." December brought the Stanford decision. Lily had been checking her email obsessively for days, refreshing the page every few minutes despite knowing the exact release time. When the notification finally appeared, she stared at her laptop for a full 30 seconds before clicking. Ethan stood behind her, his heart hammering, his hand on her shoulder. She opened the email. "Dear Lily," she read aloud, her voice shaking. "Congratulations. It is with great pleasure that we offer you admission to Stanford University's class of—" She didn't finish the sentence before bursting into tears. Ethan pulled her into a crushing hug, both of them crying and laughing simultaneously. "You did it," he kept repeating. "You did it! You did it! You did it!" "We did it," Lily corrected, her face pressed against his shoulder. "We did it, Dad." Mrs. Chen, who'd been hovering anxiously in the doorway, rushed in to add her own tears and congratulations to the celebration. They called Lily's science club advisor, her favorite teachers, even Crawford, who'd retired to Florida but still kept in touch. "Stanford!" Crawford's voice boomed through the phone speaker. "That's my girl. I knew she'd do it." That night, after Lily had finally exhausted herself and fallen asleep on the couch, Ethan sat at their kitchen table, a real table now, not the secondhand piece they'd used for years, and let himself feel the full weight of what they'd accomplished. From a janitor terrified of losing everything to a director raising a Stanford-bound daughter. From survival mode to actual thriving. From impossible dreams to guaranteed reality. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. I heard the good news. Stanford is lucky to have her. Congratulations to you both. Ethan stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Thank you for making this possible. For all of it. Her response came quickly. You made it possible. I just opened the door. You and Lily walked through it and built something extraordinary. That's all you. He set down his phone and looked at his daughter, sleeping peacefully, her Stanford acceptance letter still clutched in one hand. This fierce, brilliant girl who'd overcome chronic illness and financial hardship to achieve something most people only dreamed about. She was going to change the world. He knew it with absolute certainty. And he'd been there for every step of the journey. The years between Lily's acceptance and her actual departure for Stanford passed in a blur of preparation and bittersweet milestones. High school graduation, where she delivered the valedictorian speech to a standing ovation. Her 18th birthday, celebrated with the knowledge that she was days away from leaving for college. The scramble to buy dorm supplies and pack everything she'd need for her new life. The drive to Stanford took 8 hours. Ethan had taken a full week off work, the first real vacation he'd taken in years, to help Lily move in and get settled. Mrs. Chen had come too, insisting that her granddaughter needed proper family support for such a momentous occasion. Move-in day was organized chaos, hundreds of families navigating crowded dorms and overflowing parking lots. Ethan carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs, helped Lily organize her small room, met her roommate and her roommate's parents. All the normal college orientation activities. But when it came time to say goodbye, standing in the parking lot, with the late summer sun casting long shadows, nothing felt normal at all. You're going to be amazing, Ethan said, holding his daughter tight. You're going to learn incredible things and do incredible things and become the doctor you've always dreamed of being. I know, Lily's voice was muffled against his shoulder, but I'm going to miss you so much. I'm going to miss you too, baby, so much. He pulled back to look at her, this young woman who'd somehow replaced the little girl he remembered. But this is what we worked for. This is the whole point. I know, she repeated. It's just weird. You've been there for everything, and now you get to do this part yourself, but I'm always just a phone call away. Always. Mrs. Chen hugged Lily next, whispering something in her ear that made Lily laugh through her tears. Then they were back in the car, pulling out of the parking lot, leaving Lily standing in front of her dorm with her whole future ahead of her. Ethan made it 3 miles before he had to pull over because he couldn't see through his tears. She's going to be fine, Mrs. Chen said gently, patting his arm. Better than fine. She's going to soar. I know, she's been my whole world for so long. I don't know how to be without her. You learn, you build new things, you find new purpose. Mrs. Chen's voice was wise with experience. She doesn't need you less now, she just needs you differently. You'll figure it out. The apartment felt impossibly empty without Lily. For the first few weeks, Ethan threw himself into work, accepting every project, staying late every night, filling the silence with professional responsibilities. His team started giving him concerned looks. Margaret Lawson actually called him to her office and told him to go home at a reasonable hour. Your daughter went to college, Ethan. That's a success, not a tragedy. Stop acting like you're mourning. I'm not mourning. I'm just busy. You're avoiding an empty apartment. Her tone was blunt, but not unkind. I get it. But working yourself to death isn't the answer. Find a hobby. Take a class. Join a gym. Do something that isn't work-related. She was right, of course. Ethan started running in the morning, something he'd never had time for before. He took a cooking class. His skills had never progressed beyond basic functionality, and discovered he actually enjoyed it. He even started dating occasionally, awkward first attempts that mostly went nowhere, but at least proved he was capable of thinking about something other than work and Lily. Lily, meanwhile, was thriving. She called every Sunday, full of stories about organic chemistry and anatomy classes, about study groups and new friends, about professors who were brilliant and challenging. Her excitement was infectious. her passion for medicine growing stronger with each passing week. During her sophomore year, she called with news that made Ethan's heart swell with pride. I got accepted into a research program studying novel treatments for severe asthma. Dad, they're working on gene therapy approaches that could actually cure it instead of just managing symptoms. That's incredible, Lil. I know. And the lead researcher? Dr. Patricia Morrison. Remember my childhood pulmonologist? She moved to Stanford 3 years ago and specifically requested me for her team because she remembered me as a patient. She said I have a unique perspective that will make me a better researcher. The circle of it, Lily's childhood doctor now mentoring her research career, felt almost too perfect to be real. You're going to help cure the disease that almost killed you multiple times, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. Your mom would be so proud. I hope so. I hope she's watching somehow and knows what we built from all that struggle. She knows, baby. I'm sure she knows. Junior year brought medical school applications, the next massive hurdle in Lily's journey. She applied to Stanford's medical school along with several other top programs, her applications bolstered by her research experience, her exceptional grades, and her deeply personal understanding of respiratory medicine. The acceptance from Stanford Medical School arrived in March of her senior year. Ethan flew out to California to celebrate in person, taking Lily and a group of her friends to dinner at a restaurant that would have bankrupted him a decade ago but was now simply expensive. To Dr. Lily Mercer, he toasted, raising his glass. Soon to be, anyway. To Dr. Mercer, her friends chorused, their affection for his daughter obvious in their smiles and cheers. Later, walking across Stanford's campus under a star-filled sky, Lily linked her arm through his. Dad, I need to tell you something. The serious tone worried him. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I've been thinking about that moment that changed everything. That morning you walked into the CEO's office. You've never told me the whole story. Ethan had avoided the full details for years, giving Lily sanitized versions that skipped the terror and humiliation. But she was 22 now, an adult about to enter medical school. Maybe it was time for the complete truth. So he told her everything. The exhaustion, the panic, the absolute certainty that his life was ending. Vanessa's unexpected questions, her revelation about living in her car, her offer that had seemed impossible. The hard first months, Crawford's skepticism, the slowly building confidence, all of it. Lily listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. So she saw you, Lily said finally. Really saw you when everyone else just saw a janitor. She did. I want to meet her, properly I mean, not just passing in a hallway. I want to thank her for seeing you. I'll arrange it, Ethan promised. 3 months later, Lily graduated from Stanford with highest honors and a degree in biology. Ethan sat in the audience with Mrs. Chen, who'd insisted on making the trip despite her age and the difficulty of travel, watching his daughter cross the stage to thunderous applause. After the ceremony, as graduates milled around taking photos and celebrating, Ethan received a text from an unexpected source. I'm here. Meet me by the fountain when you have a moment. VH. His heart jumped. He'd mentioned Lily's graduation to Vanessa during a routine facilities meeting, but he hadn't expected her to actually attend. He found her sitting on the edge of the fountain, looking elegant and slightly out of place among the chaos of graduation celebrations. She stood when she saw him approaching with Lily and Mrs. Chen. Ms. Hart, Ethan said, suddenly nervous. I didn't know you'd be here. I wouldn't miss it. Vanessa's attention shifted to Lily. You must be Dr. Mercer to be. I've heard extraordinary things about you. Lily extended her hand with the confidence of someone who'd grown up knowing her worth. It's an honor to meet you, Ms. Hart. My father's told me how you changed our lives. Your father changed your lives, Vanessa corrected gently. I simply provided an opportunity. He did everything else. She shook Lily's hand warmly. Congratulations on your graduation and your acceptance to Stanford Medical School. I understand you're specializing in pulmonology. Yes, ma'am. Respiratory medicine, specifically novel treatments for severe asthma and other chronic lung conditions. Personal experience driving professional passion. That's powerful. Vanessa's expression held genuine respect. You're going to help a lot of people, Dr. Mercer. I hope so. That's the whole point. Lily hesitated, then added, Ms. Hart, I know what you did for my dad. For us. I don't have adequate words to thank you, but I want you to know every patient I help in the future, every life I improve, that's partly because of you. Because you saw potential where others saw nothing. Vanessa's composed expression flickered, something deeply moved crossing her face before her professional mask returned. That's very kind of you to say, Lily. I look forward to hearing about your career. I suspect it will be remarkable. They talked for a few more minutes, Vanessa asking intelligent questions about Lily's research and plans for medical school, before excusing herself to catch her flight back. As she walked away, Lily turned to Ethan with tears in her eyes. She's exactly like you described, strong and brilliant and kind in ways she doesn't show easily. She gave us everything, Lil. No, Dad. She gave us a chance. We built everything else ourselves. Lily smiled. Together. The next 4 years of medical school pushed Lily harder than anything she'd experienced before. The coursework was brutal, the hours endless, the pressure relentless. She called Ethan during her rare free moments, sometimes crying from exhaustion, sometimes exhilarated by what she was learning, always determined to keep pushing forward. Ethan supported her however he could, care packages during exam weeks, video calls when she needed to talk, occasional visits when his work schedule allowed. He watched his daughter transform from a student to a physician, developing the kind of competence and confidence that made her professors predict she'd be a leader in her field. During her third-year rotations, Lily did a pulmonology rotation at Stanford Hospital's respiratory intensive care unit. She called Ethan after her first day, her voice shaking. Dad, I watched a kid today, maybe 10 years old, severe asthma attack. She couldn't breathe, terrified, crying for her mom, and I knew exactly what she was feeling because I'd been her so many times. Were you able to help? Yeah, I talked to her while the attending managed the medical interventions. Told her about my asthma, about how scary it is, but how the medicine works. And I saw her relax a little, saw her start to trust that we could help her. Lily's voice broke. This is it, Dad. This is why I'm doing this. So kids like me, like I was, know that someone understands. You're going to be an amazing doctor, baby. I really think I might be. Lily's residency brought her full circle in a way that felt almost scripted. She matched for her pulmonology residency at her hometown's university hospital, the same hospital system where Dr. Morrison, her childhood pulmonologist, had first treated her before moving to Stanford. It meant she'd be close to home again, close to Ethan after years of distance. He helped her find an apartment, helped her move in, fell into a new rhythm of occasional dinners and weekend coffee dates. During her second year of residency, the hospital held a fundraising gala for respiratory research. Ethan attended to support Lily, who was being honored as an up-and-coming researcher in the field. He wore his best suit, feeling slightly out of place among the doctors and donors, when a familiar voice spoke behind him. Ethan, I thought I might find you here. He turned to find Vanessa Hart, elegant in an evening gown, holding a glass of wine. Ms. Hart, what are you doing here? Nexus Corporation is a major donor to this hospital's research programs. I like to attend these events personally. Her eyes scanned the room. And I heard your daughter was being honored. I wanted to see how her story turned out. They stood together watching as Lily accepted her award, giving a brief speech about her research into genetic markers for severe asthma and potential targeted therapies. She was poised, articulate, brilliant, everything Ethan had dreamed she might become. She's extraordinary, Vanessa said softly. You must be incredibly proud. Every single day. Ethan's voice was thick with emotion. I still can't quite believe this is real sometimes, that we made it here. Believe it. You earned every bit of it. Vanessa turned to face him directly. Do you remember what I told you that first morning about character revealing itself in ordinary moments? I do. I was right about you, Ethan. Your character, your determination, your refusal to let circumstances define you, that's what made everything else possible. The opportunity I gave you was just a door. You're the one who walked through it and built an empire on the other side. Not an empire, just a good life for my daughter. That's the best kind of empire there is. Vanessa smiled, rare and genuine. Thank you for proving me right, for being exactly the kind of person I believed you could be. After Vanessa moved on to speak with other donors, Lily appeared at Ethan's side, still glowing from her award. Was that Ms. Hart you were talking to? It was. She came to see me receive the award? She did. Lily watched Vanessa across the room, her expression thoughtful. She's been watching over us this whole time, hasn't she? Quietly, from a distance, but always paying attention. I think so, yeah. That's beautiful. Lily leaned against her father's shoulder. We've been so lucky, Dad. Not just with opportunities, but with people who believed in us. The luckiest, Ethan agreed. 6 years into her residency and fellowship, Dr. Lily Mercer published her first major research paper on genetic therapies for severe asthma. The work was groundbreaking, offering hope for patients who'd previously had limited treatment options. It made national news, landing Lily interviews and speaking engagements. Ethan watched his daughter on television, explaining complex medical concepts in terms anyone could understand, and felt like his heart might burst with pride. She was 32 years old, the same age Ethan had been when he'd walked into Vanessa's office, and she'd already accomplished more than most doctors managed in entire careers. The hospital where she'd completed her training offered her a position as an attending physician in their pulmonology department, with a joint appointment running the severe asthma research program. It was exactly what she wanted. Clinical work helping patients, research pushing the boundaries of treatment, teaching opportunities with residents and medical students. On her first day as an attending, Ethan took her to lunch at their favorite restaurant, the same ice cream shop where they'd celebrated countless milestones over the years, now expanded into a full cafe. Dr. Mercer, he said, raising his coffee cup in a toast. How does it feel? Surreal. Amazing. Terrifying. Lily laughed. All of the above? That sounds about right. She reached across the table and took his hand. Dad, I need you to know something. Every single thing I've accomplished, every award, every paper, every patient I help, it's all built on the foundation you created. You worked 3 jobs so I could breathe. You went back to school while raising me alone so you could build a better life for us. You never gave up, never stopped fighting for me, even when everything seemed impossible. Lil, no, let me finish. Her eyes were bright with tears. You taught me that circumstances don't define limits, that hard work and determination can transform your entire life, that one moment of crisis can become the catalyst for something extraordinary if you're brave enough to seize the opportunity. She squeezed his hand tighter. I'm the doctor I am today because you showed me what it means to fight for the people you love. So thank you, Dad, for everything, for all of it. Ethan couldn't speak past the emotion clogging his throat. He just held his daughter's hand and let the tears fall, grateful beyond words for the journey that had brought them here. That evening, alone in his apartment, a much nicer place than the cramped unit he'd shared with Lily for so many years, Ethan received one final text from Vanessa. I saw the news about Lily's appointment, attending physician at 32. Research director, already changing the field. You built something extraordinary, Ethan. Be proud. He typed back, I am, every single day. Thank you for making it possible. Her response, you made it possible. I just believed in you before you believed in yourself. That's what people who've walked similar paths do for each other. We recognize the potential others miss. Richard Sutton did it for me. I did it for you. Someday, when you see someone struggling and brilliant and desperate, you'll do it for them. That's how we change the world, one open door at a time. Ethan read the message 3 times, letting the weight of it settle into his bones. She was right. Someday he'd see someone invisible, someone everyone else overlooked, someone on the verge of collapse from carrying too much weight. And he'd remember what it felt like to be that person. He'd remember the CEO who'd chosen to see potential instead of a mistake. And he'd open a door for them, just as Vanessa had opened one for him. The cycle would continue. The transformation would spread. One life changed, then another, each person paying forward the gift of being truly seen. Ethan looked around his quiet apartment, at the framed photo of Lily in her white coat, at the college degree he'd earned while working full-time and raising a daughter, at the career achievements he'd once thought impossibly beyond reach. He thought about that morning 15 years ago when he'd pushed open the wrong door at the wrong time and felt his entire world collapse. The moment he'd thought would destroy him had instead become the foundation for everything that followed. Sometimes the moment you fear the most is the very moment that quietly changes your life forever. Sometimes a mistake becomes a miracle. Sometimes being seen, really seen, by the right person at the right time is enough to transform impossible dreams into guaranteed reality. Ethan picked up his phone and pulled up a photo from Lily's graduation from medical school. In it, she stood between him and Mrs. Chen, her smile radiant, her future unlimited, her past struggles transformed into the driving force behind her purpose. They'd made it. Against all odds, through impossible challenges, they'd actually made it. And tomorrow, Ethan would go back to work. He'd manage his team, lead his department, look for those quiet moments when someone invisible demonstrated extraordinary character that everyone else missed. He'd watch, he'd notice, he'd remember. And when the time was right, he'd open a door for someone who desperately needed it, just as Vanessa Hart had once done for him. The story that began with terror and ended with triumph. The janitor who became a director. The sick child who became a doctor. The impossible dream that became an extraordinary reality. This was how transformation happened. This was how lives changed. This was how you built something beautiful from the moments that tried to break you. One open door, one act of faith, one person willing to see potential where everyone else saw nothing. That was enough. That was everything.